What's that, Holmes? Oh, you mean more coffee? You want me to pour you some also? Or would you like more bacon?
No, Watson. I was not referring to the breakfast or the coffee. You will not, I'm sure, be offended in any way if I say that I find your acceptance of the ordinary always refreshing.
I don't think I understand, Holmes. I'm not aware I've done anything unusual. I've barely spoken to you since I came to the table.
Exactly. Yet you told me a great deal. You will always accept things on their face value. I happen to see quite a bit deeper than that. That's why I say you should do it. You should accept the invitation from your old school to contribute to their field bazaar. Now, am I not right?
We present the stories of Sherlock Holmes. Tonight,
the Field Bazaar. In the early days of my association with Sherlock Holmes, I have to admit that I found him rather overbearing. In later years, I grew used to his manner, and after I'd married Mary and moved away from 221B Baker Street, I was able to laugh at my feelings of inferiority. But he was never an easy man to understand, and I well remember during the summer of 1885 being particularly disconcerted by his attitude. It was one of those lovely, long, hot English summers, days which cried out to be spent in the country, walks along narrow, leafy lanes filled with the drone of bees and the smell of honeysuckle. That's why, when our letter arrived on that August morning, I was very tempted, and Holmes knew this.
I repeat, I should say yes.
Holmes, I really don't know what you're talking about.
I've just told you. You've been asked to help in the Oxley Field Bazaar, haven't you?
Yes, that's correct, but I cannot for the life of me see how you know this. The letter has only just come to hand, and I've not spoken to you since I opened it.
In spite of that, I would even venture to suggest the purpose of the bazaar. It's to gain funds in order to enlarge the school's cricket field.
Holmes, there are times when I think you use some form of black magic.
You really are a most excellent companion, Watson. You respond instantly to all my mental processes. Really, I can find you easier to read each morning than I do the daily newspapers.
I'm sorry. I'm so transparent. I don't think it unintelligent to be puzzled by your knowledge. But if you're so clever, perhaps you'll tell me how you've arrived at your conclusion.
I really claim no credit. The facts are so obvious. You came into breakfast with a thoughtful expression, the expression of a man who is debating some point in his mind. In your hand, you held a solitary letter. Now, last night you retired in the best of spirits. So it was clear that it was in this letter which caused the change in you.
Yes, well, that's obvious.
Well, anything is obvious once it's explained. I naturally asked myself what the letter could contain, which might have this effect upon you. As you came and sat down, you had the flap side of the envelope towards me. There is a crest upon it, the Oxley crest. The same shield-shaped device which is on your old cricket cap. Then you poured yourself a cup of coffee and walked over to the mantelpiece.
Yes, well, that's very observant. And then?
You gazed for some time at the group photograph of yourself in the cricket team. Clearly, you were remembering many occasions of being in that side. You came back down, helped yourself to eggs and bacon, and again read the letter. This time the envelope was face side up. I could see that it was informally addressed just to John Watson, Esquire. So it must have been something of a friendly and informal nature. Now, there are three institutions that are almost always debt-laden. The country churches, the old people's homes, and the cricket clubs. Your interest was certainly in the cricket club.
Well, quite correct.
Well, the best fundraising idea is a form of a bazaar. It's a very popular activity among public schools at the moment. Hence my suggestion that you should take part in it. Now, what is it to be? An old boys' cricket match on Oxley Common? Or will you use the school facilities?
All right, Holmes, all right, you win. Your deductions are correct as usual.
Splendid. Now tell me, are you accepting?
Yes, I will. On one condition.
Oh, what's that?
That you accompany me. Our old boy's side may be a man or two short, and you're a good bat as well as a rather crafty slow bowler. What do you say, Holmes? The weather's ideal. We stay Friday and Saturday nights at the Boar's Head on Oxley Common, get back here on Sunday evening. Very welcome break in the country. Now, come on, do say yes. To my surprise, Sherlock Holmes agreed immediately. I wrote off to Oxley School, accepting the invitation and placing my name down for cricket. I also mentioned that Holmes, while not an old boy, was prepared to help out as extra man should he be needed. The weather continued to hold good, and Friday saw us down at Oxley in good time. I'd known the Boar's Head since I was a student, and I was happy to find that it still maintained its excellent standards. That evening, the bar was crowded with visitors, all with one subject in mind: the next day's cricket match.
Oh, I say. It's Watson, isn't it? John Watson.
That's right. By Jove, don't tell me, Rufus. Matthew Rufus. Well, I haven't seen you in over 20 years.
Must be every bit of that. I take it you're down here for the match tomorrow.
That's right. Thought I'd like to support the old school, you know. Allow me to introduce you. This is Sherlock Holmes.
How do?
Colonel Matthew Rufus.
How do you do? Have you studied the sides? A copy of the teams and batting order over there on the notice board.
Yes, I did take a look at it earlier. It seemed very well balanced. Should be a good match. Hardly anyone I can remember on the list, though.
Most fellows have simply sent in a contribution. Bad show. I think it's much more cooperative to turn up and do one's bit, eh? There are a couple of the old stalwarts there, of course. Thackeray and Monckton. I was all for putting them in the same side, but the committee thought it would unbalance the match. They're both fierce cricketers. Playing together, their side would win hands down.
They always were rivals, even at college.
It got worse as the years have gone by. There's some talk about Thackeray making a pass at other men's wives. No, I'm not surprised. He always was a dog for the ladies. And Monckton's as jealous as blazes. Ungovernable temper.
Well, let's hope it doesn't find its way onto the pitch.
Sure, it could well do. Monckton is a bowler of tremendous speed, but not all that careful. He's inclined to aim at the batsman more than the wicket. Oh, dangerous. Thackeray, on the other hand, is known to go all out to win, regardless of what happens.
Yes, well, what I recall, he's never been a popular man with the other side. Never takes a risk. Successful, but not really a sportsman. Plays to win. Doesn't care how it comes about.
Yeah, that's right. Uses his pads too much. Never played an innings without 2 or 3 appeals for LBW. Rumour also has it that he'd often tried to square the umpires in his favour.
Yeah, doesn't sound a very good sort.
Well, neither of them are, in my opinion. The captains will just have to keep a tight rein, huh? Oh, that's your captain over there in the corner having a quiet pint. Charles Ellis, local chemist. Sound fellow. Take you across and introduce you, shall I?
I met Ellis and a few other cricketers whom I didn't know. Holmes, never bored when there were interesting people around to study, puffed away at his Meerschaum pipe and listened avidly to the local gossip. Time went by, and then Ellis and the Colonel were joined by James Monckton.
Well, Monckton, ready for the game tomorrow?
You're ready for anything, Colonel. Anything that your side and that lout Thackeray can dish up.
Come on now, Monckton. That's not the spirit to approach the game with. It's a social occasion, not a private war.
And that's all very well, Ellis. You're Thackeray's captain, and it's your job to see he plays cricket in the proper manner. For as long as I've known him, he's been utterly selfish out there in the pitch. He thinks only of himself, getting runs and blocking with his pads. It holds up the game and drags it out, just stonewalling until the spectators groan with boredom. I hope you give him some firm instructions not to apply those tactics tomorrow.
Monckton, you know as well as I do that that's his style of play.
But surely you can advise him to take a few chances. Go for some runs and give the crowd their money's worth. And as you say, it's a social occasion. Let's give him something to clap for.
I'm sure he'll do his best.
Well, if he plays his usual game, it won't be good enough. I tell you, now give him a run for his money. If he starts that pad play stuff, I'll pack my leg field and have him on the hop.
Now, look here, Monkton. That's no attitude. That's no attitude in which to approach the game. This is cricket, not a blasted vendetta.
No, and you've got to remember that Thackeray isn't as young as he was. You start bowling bouncers and aiming for his body, it could cause him an injury.
Well, that's too bad. It's up to him.
I heard all that, Monkton. Didn't know I was at the bar just behind you, did you?
Huh? No, Thackeray. Well, I don't care if you heard or not. In fact, it's just as well. Perhaps now your captain will give you some well-founded advice.
I don't need any advice, not from Ellis or anyone else. I'm going to play my usual game. Just because you've never got the better of me, on the field or off, is no reason why I should change.
It's a pity you can't change a lot of things. Your behavior as a man is almost as bad as your cricket manners.
Now, look here. If you really want to get personal, everyone knows you're not much of a man in lots of ways. Ask your wife.
Why, you dirty lout! You take that back or I'll not...
That's enough. Colonel Rufus, take these men out of here. This be a respectable pub, not gymnasium. Hear me? If you want to fight, get out on the lane. Now, come on, it's time anyway. Time, gentlemen, please.
Clear from that very first evening that the Saturday match on Oxley Common was not going to be the quiet, relaxed game of village cricket that we'd all expected. Most of us, from Colonel Rufus and George Biggs the publican, down to the lowest farmer's boy, deplored the bad manners shown by both Monkton and Thackeray. Outside the Boar's Head in the warm night air, the two men were made to apologize to Biggs and were persuaded to shake hands. And then, in an atmosphere of uneasy truce, they said good night. Monkton went striding off down the main street, while Thackeray stood for a while arguing with Ellis, who was, no doubt, giving him a bit of a dressing down. The next morning saw the opening of the field bazaar by the vicar of Oxley. And after luncheon, our side won the toss, and Chelmsford and Howes went into bat. I noted that Monkton was not put on to bowl, and wondered if they were saving him for when Thackeray went to the crease, which seemed rather a dangerous plan. However, whether by accident or design, that's exactly what happened. Chelmsford was caught in the slips at a score of 15, and in went Thackeray. He played his usual tight game, scoring quite a few runs, but taking no chances, and using his pads whenever possible. Then, when the total was 29, the opposing captain put Monkton on from the duck pond end. A murmur went round the spectators. Rumours spread quickly in country villages, and Oxley was no exception. Everyone knew of a row the night before.
Gad, those two are really at it. A bad show, eh, Holmes?
Well, they're certainly not sinking their differences for the good of the game.
Oh, dear. An appeal for LBW.
Umpire has disallowed it there. Thackeray was very lucky there, if you ask me.
Just the sort of thing to infuriate Monkton.
Yeah, afraid so. You start bowling straight at him to teach him a lesson. Same old arguments. Just what we feared would happen, huh?
Well, here he comes again. Long run, right up to the wicket.
Gad, that must have hurt. Bounced right full up and caught Thackeray in the chest. Oh, it's not cricket, sir. Intent to harm, all right. Definitely not cricket.
Thackeray seems doubled up, but I think he's all right. He's not leaving the field, anyway. He's just rubbing his chest under the heart, hitching his pants up now and patting the crease.
Monkton in again. A fast one. And this time, Thackeray has got his own back. Well outside the stumps. And he stepped out and put his left pad to it. I can't blame him. Oh, Monkton is furious, of course. Going back now to run again. Takes a long run, this man. Oh, that's false. He needs it. But in he comes. But wait a minute. Thackeray's staggering. Something is happening out there. But Thackeray's slumping down. Great heavens, he's collapsed. He's fallen down on his face.
Watson, that man is ill out there. Come on, get out to him. He's seriously ill. Come on, let's get out there while there's still time.
Holmes and I left our seats in the pavilion, and hurriedly followed by the colonel, we raced across the grass towards the cricket pitch. Game had stopped, of course, and a cluster of fielders gathered around the prostrate body of Thackeray. They made way for me automatically, and I knelt down beside him. One look was enough. The man was dead.
What's the matter, Watson? You're a doctor. What's wrong with the man?
I'm afraid he's dead, Colonel. Must have been that blow under the heart. We must get him back to the pavilion.
Dead? All right, men. Lift him up. Carefully now. Alice?
Yes.
Please see that there's as little fuss as possible.
Okay.
Carry him off the field. The match must, of course, be abandoned, and I must see that the police are informed. Monkton, please find the village council.
Police? What for? I mean, it must have been a heart attack. Why send for the police?
Well, there must be an examination. Must make it official. I have no doubt about Watson's verdict, but things must be done in the correct manner. Give a hand there. Give a hand and keep the people back, for heaven's sake. Come along. Let's get some order into things. Come on.
Thackeray's body was carried to the pavilion, and there a meeting extraordinary was held by the colonel. There was no panic. People were very concerned, but sympathetic and considerate. Sam Wiley, the local constable, was dispatched on his bicycle into Oxley for a carriage ambulance from the hospital. And shortly after that, Inspector Winters arrived. Well, there was really nothing much anyone could do. It was just a regrettable accident. At least, so we all thought at that time. I looked around the pavilion and found Sherlock Holmes carefully removing the dead man's pads. Holmes, what a tragic accident.
That's what it appears to be, doesn't it? But as I'm always saying to you, Watson, you will take things at their face value. Oh, now, careful with these pads. I imagine the inspector will be in here at any moment. Things must be left to him, of course, but if he needs my help, then I will willingly give it. I think that for the time being, it would be better not to interfere.
Holmes, you can't mean that this was not an accident.
Of course it wasn't.
I see what you mean. Monkton's intention to harm Thackeray at all costs. Yes, it's a very tricky situation.
Right,
Here they come now. Colonel, Monkton, and the inspector.
Yes, well, we carried him in here, of course. And encouraged all the spectators to get back to the field bazaar. There's no sense in allowing this tragedy to ruin the whole of the charity.
I understand, Colonel. I agree. But after the body is taken away, I'm afraid I shall have to go into things in rather more detail. For instance, Monkton, I shall have to ask you to come with me to the police station.
But whatever for?
Well, there will be an inquest. It's purely another formality, of course. I have no doubt it was heart failure. But heart failure caused by what? Everyone knows it was a blow to the heart by a cricket ball traveling at terrific speed.
Now, wait a minute. I didn't kill Thackeray. I mean, it was an accident. I didn't deliberately kill him.
Manslaughter is a very loose term, Monkton. There's a great deal of difference between manslaughter and murder. Manslaughter involves unplanned conditions and the like, accidents through negligence. But you were intent on causing bodily harm. There are dozens of witnesses prepared to testify to that.
But that's ridiculous. An unlucky blow.
Like a man who killed someone in a fight? Exactly. Sorry, the matter will have to be taken up. It simply can't be glossed over. Do you not agree, Colonel?
It's not for me to say. You're the law, but... I'd seek advice from a solicitor as soon as you can, Monkton.
Sound advice, Colonel. Come, man, you haven't been charged with anything yet. Let's get the body out of here. The carriage is waiting.
Bring him out this way.
Go. That's it. Get the doors open, Peter.
Well, Holmes, aren't you coming?
No. No, and neither are you. We are both staying here.
Holmes, what do we do here?
Very simple, Watson. Catch the murderer.
Murderer?
Quite. Thackeray didn't die of a heart attack. He was poisoned.
Holmes, you can't be serious.
My dear Watson, have I ever joked about sudden death? You are a medical man, but you were just as taken in by the circumstances as anyone else. I examined the dead man and thought it looked more like poison than a heart attack, and I was right. Look, careful now. Study the dead man's pads. Here, let me show you. Now, you see, these pads are stiffened with cane struts, but here is another twisted thorn. That splinter of wood is impregnated with a deadly poison. The man died not directly after a blow under the heart, but immediately after a blow on the left knee. He stepped out, used his pad. The splinter tore into the flesh of his knee, and that's how he died.
Then if what you say is correct, whoever organized this dreadful crime must have known that Thackeray would be hit on the pads.
The whole of Oxley knows that. Thackeray was bound sooner or later to risk putting a pad out to a fast ball in sheer defiance of Monkton's tactics. The fact that he received a blow the ball before was simply coincidence, and one which worked very nicely as far as the murderer was concerned.
But Holmes? And who could have done this terrible thing?
That's what we have to discover, isn't it? Look, the hue and cry has died down a little now. We shall have to be patient, I'm afraid. This pavilion is used not only as a dressing room for cricketers, but for storage as well. The cement roller, the gardener's equipment, everything used to keep the common clean and tidy. There are plenty of places where we can conceal ourselves. Somehow I don't think we shall have long to wait. Yes, here, behind here. Yes, that's it. Now, Thackeray's pads are clearly displayed there on the bench. Wait. Quickly, Watson, quickly. I think we're about to have a visit. Shh, wait. Look there. The open doorway. Wait until he picks it up. Now, Watson, hold him. Hold him.
What the devil? How dare you? What do you think you're doing?
All right. Call the colonel and the constable. It's all over, Ellis. As a cricket captain, you may be quite good, but as a killer, you're caught out in every sense of the word.
Ellis was taken away by Constable and Colonel Rufus. Under interrogation, he broke down and confessed everything. It was a diabolically clever plan that he'd conceived and almost carried out. It was left to Holmes to fill in the details, as usual.
You may have noticed when we first arrived down here that I was unusually quiet at the bar. I was listening to the local gossip. It wasn't all about Thackeray and Monkton and their cricketing rivalry. There was a deal of talk about Thackeray's amours with the local ladies. Everyone thought he was after Monkton's wife, but quite a few locals knew that it was Ellis's wife with whom he was carrying on an affair quite openly. Ellis, being the local chemist, had no difficulty in obtaining the Brazil curare poison. It fades from the bloodstream in a matter of hours and so would remain undetected. Oh, yes, it was very clever. But thanks to you being on the spot, Watson, he had no chance of examining the dead man and removing his pads straight away. I think we've made our contribution to justice and the field bazaar, don't you?
Listen again next Sunday to The Stories of Sherlock Holmes, with Graham Armitage as Holmes and Kerry Jordan as Dr. Watson. We present The Stories of Sherlock Holmes.
The Beaumount Affair. I'd heard of Lady Ada Fitzhugh, who in London, or for that matter all England, hadn't. She was a famous beauty, had married into the peerage, and from that moment on become the model of autocratic behavior. Upright and self-disciplined, she had maintained the admiration of all when, after her husband died doing his duty in India, she had settled down to show society a standard that few could live up to. Her famous house in Mayfair and her country seat at Beaumont in Cumberland were well known. Few people were invited to them. When they were honoured guests.
Good morning, my lady. You're very welcome. May I introduce you to Dr. Watson, my friend and colleague for many years?
How do you do, Doctor? Yes, of course I've heard of you. Where may I sit?
Any way you wish. This chair is reasonably comfortable.
Oh, thank you. Mr. Holmes, I shall not bandy words with you. We are both too intelligent. I shall come straight to the point. I need your advice, and I'm willing to pay for it.
I'm willing to listen to anything you have to say.
I have a niece, Mrs. Blanche Lee. You may have heard of her. She's often commented upon in the society magazines, photographed for her flawless beauty. She is indeed the original English rose. No artificial devices at all. Quite natural. I'm very fond of her, although I think she's made a dubious marriage. However, that's not the point. Of late, she has been behaving in a most strange way. I've noticed it several times at my home here in Mayfair and at Beaumont. It distresses me. I fear she will fall from grace and popularity. I want you to investigate the matter, and I shall pay you whatever you require.
I am a criminal detective, milady. There seems nothing criminal to investigate in what you told me so far. You say your niece has been behaving strangely. May I ask in what manner?
Well, she appears quite normal at most times. During the day, she's cheerful and full of vitality. But towards the evening, she wilts. She has yet to appear at dinner without lapsing into a form of a trance. I cannot insist that she's medically examined, and I doubt if that will give the answer. But I cannot describe it, Mr. Holmes. It's bewildering, as though someone is hypnotizing her, some sort of vessel possessing her.
Interesting. But it seems to me a case more for my doctor friend than for myself.
Well, perhaps. But I should value the opinions of both of you. Now, I'm holding a small house party at Beaumont this weekend, and Blanche will be present, though her husband has had to decline the invitation. Just a few selected guests. I should be happy if you and Dr. Watson would attend. An open check to your favorite charity will be the expression of my thanks. Well, Mr. Holmes?
I'm sure that had I not been present, Holmes would have rejected Lady Ada's invitation. As it was, the thin-lipped smile broadened. He had again read my mind and knew that I'd be delighted to go to Beaumont's. He accepted. Lady Ada advised the time of arrival and departed graciously.
Perhaps a weekend out of London would not be a bad idea, Watson.
An invitation to Beaumont's is an incredible opportunity, Holmes, and it should be most interesting.
I wonder. I think Lady Ada knows far more than she's telling us. Mrs. Blanche Lee must be aware of these times when she's not herself. Why doesn't she discuss the matter more freely? Yes, it might, as you say, be very interesting.
All preparations were made. We caught the northbound train on Friday morning and arrived at Beaumont in the late afternoon. Lady Ada had sent a carriage to the station, and after being shown our rooms, we went down to the great hall where tea was being served, and where we were introduced to the other guests.
Mr. Roland Dean.
Hello.
Count Carl Minchner. This is Mr. Sherlock Holmes and Dr. John Watson.
How do you do?
And here is my niece, Blanche Lee.
It is indeed an honor to meet one so famous as yourself, Mr. Holmes. My husband has worked with your brother Michael.
So I believe. It's a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Lee.
Oh, please. Call me Blanche. I'm sure we can all be on first name terms for the next few days. Oh, what a delightful company you have assembled, Aunt. Tell me, Count, have you brought das Lustspiel with you?
Yeah, he's up in my room. My lady knows that I never travel without him. Oh, I can't help it. He will pine away. Simply die if I leave him behind.
Oh, you really must meet das Lustspiel, Mr. Holmes. He is the Count's favorite pirate.
Is he very old, Count? They say nearly 100 years. No one can tell. Not even das Lustspiel himself knows.
Have you asked him?
Oh, I have many times.
And what does he say?
Oh, he says, too old, too old, too old.
Well, if everyone has taken tea, then perhaps you'd like to be shown over the estate.
Oh, yeah.
After that, we shall go our own ways until dinner. And that is at 8 o'clock sharp. So come.
The Beaumont estate was breathtakingly lovely, and I enjoyed the hour's walk. I had no time to speak privately with Holmes, but I could see him eyeing Blanche Lee quite keenly. She was indeed the most beautiful woman, tall, slender, with black hair, and the bluest eyes I've ever seen. She was aglow with health. And yet, when we sat down to dinner, a subtle change slowly came over her. From being beautiful, she grew too old and disagreeable. Her dazzling smile vanished, and when she answered a question, her lips drew back in what was almost a snarl. Everyone noticed as the meal went on.
Would anyone care to ride tomorrow?
Oh, I would, Lady Ada. I always enjoy taking the horses out early. Count, what do you say?
Oh, my horse riding days are over, I'm afraid.
What of you, Blanche? We've ridden out early before. Come with me.
No.
We needn't go early. Any time you like.
I said no, and I mean no. But, excuse me.
Blanche! Blanche! Are you all right? Blanche, my dear!
I'm right. Just leave me alone. Leave me alone.
We were all horrified. Of course, the rest of the meal was a fiasco. Lady Ada did her best to set us at ease, but we were glad when it was over. Blanche had locked herself in her room, and there was no chance of me examining her. I hurriedly consulted Holmes. What do you think, Holmes? What caused that sudden transformation?
I don't know. As a medical man, what do you say yourself, Watson?
I hardly like to suggest it, but I can only think that the lady takes drugs.
Here's my own impression. But have you known any drug have that effect?
No, but there could well be one. I'm a general practitioner, Holmes. I'm not a specialist on drugs. What can we do?
Well, nothing for tonight. Tomorrow after breakfast, I'll speak to Lady Ada. The first opportunity, I shall need to search Blanche Lee's room and all her personal effects. There must be something there that will tell me what I want to know.
With that, Holmes retired. I didn't know how well he slept, but I had a very troubled night. I simply could not forget the scene at the dinner table. In the morning, very reluctantly, Lady Ada agreed to Holmes' plan. Blanche had risen quite early. She appeared to be quite her old self and had gone off riding with Roland Dean. Lady Ada showed us to Blanche's room.
This is Blanche's room. I don't like to do this. It's wrong to search another person's belongings.
I believe in this case it is justified. Tell me, who has the rooms either side of this one?
Roland Dean has the one on the left, and Count Minchner the one on the other side.
Count Carl Minchner and his parrot.
Yes.
Yes. There's no connecting doors and no common veranda. So much for the geography. Now to the examination. I must ask you, Lady Ada, to let me proceed upon my own. Do not touch anything. Watson knows my methods. Just leave all this to me.
I'd seen Holmes search a room and its personal effects many times, but I'd never known him be more thorough. Every article of clothing, every item on the dressing table, including jewellery, was subjected to close scrutiny through his powerful magnifying glass. Eventually, he rose, appearing more satisfied.
Well, I think that's all I can do at the moment. You will see that this investigation remains secret, will you not, my lady?
Oh, of course. For my own sake as much as yours. Have you found out anything that will help us, Mr. Holmes?
Perhaps. Will you excuse us now, lady? Come, Watson, I need a walk in the garden. And there we shall try a small experiment. An experiment that could well solve this whole mystery. And may I lead the way?
Sherlock Holmes led the way out of the house and into its grounds. He paced the lawns thoughtfully, occasionally looking up at the room he had just been searching. Then he chose a small summer house by the lake and motioned me to sit near him.
Sit down, Watson. Sit down.
Well, Holmes, what's this experiment you wish to carry out? What am I to do?
You are merely to stay here with me, Watson. Stay by my side, and whatever happens during the next few minutes, do not call to aid. Keep silent and watch over me. Remember, do not let anyone witness this or know of it. Just stay with me. Note down everything, and wait until I give you permission to walk back into the house. Do you understand and promise me this?
Yes, of course. Very well. With that, Holmes began rubbing his hands together, and then smoothing his lips, moistening them with his tongue, and breathing quite heavily. Slowly, a change came over him. His eyes lost their usual keenness. His jaw sagged forward. His whole complexion changed. It was exactly as Blanche Lee had acted at dinner the night before. I couldn't believe my eyes. Holmes, you're all right.
Yes, of course, I'm all right.
But you look different. You sound different. Now what's happened to you?
Quiet. Mind your own business.
Holmes, this is dreadful. You look like a man possessed. I can't just sit here and watch this happen. Look, I'm going to help. Someone must be told.
No, all right, no. Do you understand? Didn't you promise me, you fool?
But what has happened? Surely you can tell me. Let me help you as a doctor. I should know.
Will you not be patient? You can't hold your tongue and then go out onto the path. But don't call anyone. That is an order. You understand? An order.
I stood at the entrance to the summer house, guarding over Holmes as he sat back on the seat, his hands clenching the ivy-covered woodwork, his mouth open, and eyes staring into space. Eventually, he relaxed and appeared to slumber. I stood looking out over the water, almost in despair. And then I felt a hand touch my shoulder.
Oh, right, Watson. Thank you very much. I think we can return to the house now.
Oh, Holmes. Oh, thank goodness for that. You're yourself again. Whatever happened? I've never seen you like that. It scared me half to death.
Not as much as I myself was scared, I do assure you.
Whatever happened? What caused it all? And can you recall what happened?
Oh, yes. But I cannot enlarge upon the matter at the moment, Watson. I shall be able to explain to you later. Meanwhile, it is sufficient that I have solved the mystery, and it only remains for me to set matters right here. I think I know a way of doing so. Come, back to the house. And not a word of this to a soul.
Yes, of course. But, I've seldom been so bewildered, Holmes.
You have been a great help. But I must ask you to do two more things.
Huh?
One is to get into the nearest village and send a telegram to the house addressed to me. Word it so that anyone seeing it will think it is from London, recalling us both urgently. With a little luck, we may be able to catch the night train home.
Is that what you want?
It is vitally necessary. I promise you we shall have this case solved in the next 24 hours.
So it is a case. There is something criminal going on.
I would say it as nasty a crime as any outside actual murder. But come, I wasted enough time. You go about your business, and I shall go about mine. We shall not meet until lunchtime. Good luck, Watson, and thank you again.
I did as Holmes requested. I found a post office in a nearby village and managed to make sure a telegram would get to Beaumont's that afternoon. Then I found Count Karl Minchner. I found he was a great authority in all kinds of birds other than parrots, and so it was easy to get him to walk through the woods identifying bird calls. We returned to the house to find Lady Ada in a state of great concern and confusion.
Count, my dear Count, I really don't know what to say to you.
What's this, milady? What is the matter?
It's your parrot.
What?
It is Das Lustspiel.
What has happened to him? He is not hurt, injured?
No, nothing is wrong with the bird. It's just that... Oh, Blanche, my dear.
What on earth is the matter? Why are you looking so distraught, Aunt? Count, what is wrong? We've had such a lovely morning.
I hardly like to say this, but Das Lustspiel must have got out of the Count's room and somehow flown onto your balcony and entered your room, Blanche. He's made a terrible mess of things. Quite a lot of the brightly coloured materials have been torn, and the dressing table is in complete disarray. Oh, please, you must come with me and see for yourselves and well, let's hope that there's nothing missing, jewellery or anything of importance. So come quickly, I have just nothing.
Well, it's certainly a mess, but I don't think there's anything missing. There might be a few trinkets, a small comb, the pad I polish my nails with, that sort of thing, but nothing of importance.
Lustspiel, you are a very naughty boy, very naughty, not so, yeah?
Oh, really? There's nothing to make a fuss about. Don't scold him.
But what I say is, the mystery, how did he get in here? Oh, Liebchen, you are too old to fly into these tricks, you know.
I always thought the Count was too eccentric for words. Perhaps your aunt will put a stop to him bringing such pets down here after this.
Hope so. But no harm done after all.
In the afternoon, the telegram arrived for Holmes, and he made a great display of regret at having to leave Beaumont's by the evening train. Lady Ada was clearly upset, but Holmes reassured her that there would be no more trouble, and her niece would never suffer the attacks of personality change again. With that, we departed. Holmes said nothing on the journey back to London. He slept most of the way. But once there, he hailed a hansom cab, and much to my surprise, gave an address in St. John's Wood. But, Holmes, I can't understand this. What is it all about? Now, look, I've done my best to be patient, but I refuse to be treated like a child. I will accompany you no further without an explanation.
We're going to the home of Mr. Matthew Lee Watson. I'm sorry that I've had to inflict so much upon you. It has sorely tried your patience, but all will be revealed to you once we talk to Blanche Lee's husband. I know it's very late, but on the other hand, we're sure of finding him at home. It's quite essential that we talk before his wife gets in touch with him. This is the street. It would not be long now.
I controlled my annoyance. I was too intrigued to desert Holmes at this stage. It took quite some time to get a reply to our continual knocking, but eventually a dishevelled butler was persuaded to show us into Matthew Lee's library. And there, some 10 minutes later, the irate gentleman himself entered.
Now, look here, what is this? What the devil do you mean by knocking me up at this time of the night? You are Mr. Sherlock Holmes, are you not? Yes, I know your brother. Could never imagine him acting in this disgraceful manner.
On the contrary, my croft is far more ruthless than I am when it comes to criminal matters.
Criminal matters? What do you mean, criminal matters? What are you talking about?
Dr. Watson and I have just returned from a visit to Beaumont's, where your wife is spending the week as a guest of her aunt's. This, of course, you well know.
Well, of course I do. Well, what's wrong? Something happened to Blanche?
No, that's no thanks to you. Why do you do it, Lee? Why did you try to discredit your wife in the eyes of her aunt and any guests she may have invited her to dine with?
I don't know what you're talking about.
No? Then perhaps this will remind you. Here. It's a small, round, jewelled container, rather like a locket. It opens so. And inside, we find, what? A paste of some kind. It is your wife's. Do you know what she uses it for?
I think it's something she polishes her fingernails with, isn't it?
That's the excuse she may have made at one time, but your wife is famed for her natural beauty, isn't she? She does not wave her hair or cream her face or even powder her nose. The rose of England is quite natural. That is part of her beauty, and one of the reasons why most young men fall in love with her. Oh, yes. You're wildly jealous of Blanche, aren't you? She's something of a flirt, I can tell now. She completely bewitched that young Rolandine, although he was rather put off when she acted so strangely at dinner last night. She appeared to be another person, a rather repulsive, rude, and ugly person.
I can't be blamed for my wife's peculiarities.
Oh, but you can. You know that for years now, the only type of beauty aid that Blanche has used is a lip salve. In the evenings, after dressing for dinner, she would gently smear a little of this ointment across her lips. It gave them a rosy glow, and prevented them from feeling wrapped and coarse. But you have often tampered with that lip salve, have you not? If this ointment were to be analyzed, the pharmacist would find it contains a rare alkaloid substance known as tyrosine. Large doses of it would induce fits, strokes, and even madness in human beings. Small doses cause irrationality, loss of memory, flashes of ungovernable temper, I know. I tested it out myself this morning. Watson will tell you that it changed me completely and for the worst. It is a foul thing that you've been doing to your wife. I judge it to be a criminal thing.
I know, I admit it now. I must have been mad to have thought it out. I wanted to put an end to her incessant flirting and carrying on. I thought if she could appear to be discredited in social circles because of her infamous behavior, it would make her turn back to me. I wanted her to appear repentant, so that I alone could enjoy her attractiveness. I admitted that now. I'm ashamed of myself. So what are you going to do, Mr. Holmes?
Leave you and trust you to throw that container into the Thames. I think that is all. It's been a wretched story, and you are a wretched man. Come, Watson, time we went home.
Holmes and I returned to the waiting hansom, and as we clattered our way back to Baker Street, I asked Holmes how he came to clear the affair up so quickly.
I noticed Blanche's lips when she came in to dinner. They were the only part of her that was different. Of course, once she drank some wine, the poison entered her throat. She had no other beauty preparation on her dressing table but that small container. After I'd proved it by taking some of the stuff myself, I left that parrot out of the Count's room and took it into Blanche's. I stole a few trifles to make it look as though the bird had been a thief. An unsavory case, Watson. With only one unsolved difficulty. How do I prove to Lady Ada that I've been responsible for saving her niece and can claim that open check without letting the cat out of the bag?
Listen again next Sunday to The Stories of Sherlock Holmes, with Graham Armitage as Holmes and Kerry Jordan as Dr. Watson.
Are you sure that'll be all, sir?
Oh, yes, thank you, Gilpin. I shan't want anything more. Oh, by the way, how's your wife? Is she recovering from the operation?
Well, I'm happy to say there's progress, but it will be a long job, sir.
Yes, yeah. Buy her something with this. Cheer her up.
Oh, thank you, sir. You're most kind. I do appreciate it.
Oh, that's all right. I hope things go well for you. Good night, Gilpin.
Good night, sir.
Well, no use putting it off any longer.
present the stories of Sherlock Holmes.
A matter of conscience.
James Beresford's death by his own hand shocked the London business world. The rumours had been well-founded. Never smoke without fire, the financiers said over their whiskies and sodas. Beresford's notes had been going about the city at 40% discount, and there were no takers. Settling day was the very next day. He realized he was a completely ruined man, and so he took the only way out.
James Beresford, the man who shot himself yesterday. He at least did not leave a wife and family.
No, quite. Poor devil. I know the man was a gambler and probably wreaked a great deal of havoc through his ruthlessness in business, but I can't help feeling sorry for him. He must have been in a desperate state of mind.
Indeed, yes. I met the gentleman on more than one occasion through my brother Mycroft in the Diogenes Club. He was on the surface a most amiable and fair-minded man. He was well liked by many and feared by most. A man like Beresford makes many enemies in the course of a lifetime.
Well, you mean that his enemies may have brought about his ruin?
Oh, undoubtedly. The point is that in order to outmaneuver his kind, one has to be within the inner circle, as it were.
Well, I don't think I follow that, Holmes.
Well, I mean only someone near to him, someone who held his confidence, would be able to trick him so cleverly that it would lead to total bankruptcy.
But you think he was driven to this by the treachery of his friends?
Oh, almost certainly. That may appear cynical of me, and I doubt if we shall ever learn the truth, but I should judge it to be so.
How dreadful that any man can be betrayed to that extent.
Quite. It is inhuman and immoral. But not a criminal matter, for no one has broken any laws. One can cheat a man quite legally by giving him false advice. If I sway your judgment to back a horse that has no chance of winning, well, whose fault is that?
Yes, well, I see what you mean. But if Beresford was forced to kill himself by someone else, I wouldn't like to have that person's conscience.
Ah, yes, a matter of conscience. Yes, that is a different matter. We have a visitor. I wonder who that can be so early on a cold November's morning.
Now, if it's anybody important, you have no need to fear of my presence. I've sadly neglected my patients due to this flu epidemic, and I must be about my business.
Oh, no, please don't go. I value your opinions. They give me the slant of the ordinary man in the street.
Oh, excuse me, a young lady to see you, Mr. Holmes. Refuses to give her name, and apparently she ain't got no car.
Well, our business must be urgent to ignore the weather and the social niceties. Show her in, Mrs. Hudson.
Oh, very well. This way, please. Thank you.
Do come in. May I introduce myself? I am Sherlock Holmes, and this is my friend and colleague, Dr. Watson.
How do you do?
I know who you are. I have often seen you, Mr. Holmes.
Do come nearer the fire. Take a seat. Some coffee?
No, thank you. I cannot stop. And you will possibly ask me to leave anyway. You see, I want some advice, but I'm not prepared to give you my name or address.
That is at least honest. You could have lied about those facts and hoped to get away with it.
I don't lie. I always tell the truth. I want you to advise me on the correct course of punishing a man who has forced another man to commit suicide.
That is a most curious request. Something which is both pertinent and topical. I take it that you're referring to the death of Mr. James Beresford.
How did you guess that?
It's really not at all hard. The case is splashed all over the newspapers. Watson and I were discussing the tragedy and the poor fellow's state of mind just before you called.
Suicide while the balance of his mind was disturbed. That what you think? Nonsense. He was driven to it by Max Corbett.
Max Corbett? Yes, they started as partners, is that not so? Very many years ago. An enterprise known as International Supplies. Very ambitious and very successful.
It was all James Beresford's skill and business acumen. But Corbett and his cronies got to know more. They deceived him in various different ways under different names. Beresford trusted them. He was unaware, even up to the last 6 months, of the bitterness and hatred he was faced with. Can you believe it?
Oh, yes. Please continue. You're telling me very little that I didn't know.
Beresford was forced in the end to turn to moneylenders, only to find that they also were puppets of Max Corbett's men. Then came the final squeeze. It was cold-blooded and calculated. And at the moment these men are pretending to be heartbroken, but they are inwardly delighted. They should be punished. They must be punished. Particularly Max Corbett. Do you not agree with me, Mr. Holmes?
My dear young lady, as I pointed out to Watson only a short while ago, this cannot be regarded as a criminal matter. Everything you say may be true. You may even be able to produce certain facts as proof, but there is no way that you're going to pin a crime onto Max Corbett. If you start to spread these rumors, you can lay yourself open to an action for slander. But Corbett is too clever to be caught like that.
You mean that my hands are tied? That there is nothing I or anyone else can do?
I didn't say that. I shall have to give the matter some thought. I wonder... Watson, while you're doing your rounds, will you be anywhere within the vicinity of the Diogenes Club?
I can be, Holmes, yes.
Then would you be good enough to deliver a note to my brother Mycroft? He's bound to be there around lunchtime. Excuse me a moment. Paper and pen. Envelope. Yes.
Mr. Holmes, it is quite clear that my worst fears have been confirmed. I am doing no good here, merely wasting your time. I'd better leave.
No. Please don't go. There you are, Watson. Now, if you could see that this is delivered as soon as possible.
Very well. I shall do my best. Oh, will you excuse me now? I'm a doctor and have to attend to patients. I shall call back later, Holmes. Good morning to you.
Now, young lady, answer me one thing. If I agree to help you, you will give me your name and address here and now?
I got to the Diogenes Club just before lunch and left Holmes's note for his brother. The place seemed unusually crowded. I met a few people I knew who invited me for a drink, and it being a cold day, I accepted gratefully. It was while in one of the rooms that I heard the name Max Corbett mentioned.
Ah, Max. Max Corbett. Might have known that you'd be here today. Toasting to success?
I don't know what you mean, Wilder. I came to collect some mail. And now I'm off to see my fiancée. That's worth a toast.
Ah, yes, the Honourable Abigail Stratton. Yes, I read of your engagement. Congratulations.
Thank you. But today is not a happy one. Not after hearing of poor Beresford shooting himself.
Poor Beresford indeed. Cut out the rot, Max. I happen to have been on the right side when international supplies went under, so I'm not complaining. But I'm not a fool. You and I and the rest of the crowd caused it to happen.
That's a lie.
It's true when you know it. You put Beresford out of the game as surely as if you pulled the trigger of that revolver yourself. You played every dirty trick you could to beat him. I've got to hand it to you. You got what you wanted. Mind you, what Abigail Stratton would think. Well, lucky for you, she doesn't understand business deals.
Now, you keep Abigail out of this.
Oh, it doesn't matter to me. She's your problem. I wonder how you'll explain it all. Tell me something, Max. Were you very afraid of him?
Afraid of him? Afraid of Beresford? No, of course not. Not in the slightest.
Well, I'd say you were scared stiff. That's why you couldn't fight straight. You've made a fortune out of him, but you had to do it crookedly. James Beresford was a gambler, but a fair one. Something you'll never be, a fair fighter.
Now, that's enough, Wilder. I'm not staying here to listen to this. And you'd better watch your step. You're right when you say I have influence now, more than I've ever had. So be careful.
You can't frighten me, Max. I've taken all precautions.
Excuse me, Mr. Corbett. You called for your mail, but this one must have been overlooked. It was at the desk. How he got there, I can't say. Must have just arrived by hand.
Oh. Well, thank you. Excuse me, Walter. What? Well, that's strange. The handwriting, it looks like...
Well, go on. Open it up then, old boy. Might be important.
We can't end it like this. You cannot get rid of me. I shall always be near. I will call upon you at your home in Eaton Square next Thursday evening, exactly at 9 o'clock. You will see me. You cannot avoid it. Jimmy. Oh, what the devil?
What's up, Max? You look as though you've seen a ghost. Not bad news, I hope. Something frightened you? Again? What is it this time? Something real or something imaginary? Or is it the fact that you have a guilty conscience?
The next few days were very busy ones for me. I was either out in the cold, misty London streets visiting sick patients or attending to them in my surgery. I hardly saw Holmes, and when I did, he was usually coming in or going out of 221B Baker Street so muffled up that I could scarcely recognize him. Then, about 2 days after the inquest on the death of James Beresford, we had a caller. The morning was a foggy one. Gas lamps burned in the streets long after daylight. It was surprisingly cold, and Mrs. Hudson arrived later than usual. She was not pleased to receive a visitor in these circumstances.
Oh, now, what on earth? Oh, it's going to be one of those days. Yes?
I want to see Sherlock Holmes, Mark.
I'm not so sure that you can. Have you an appointment?
No, but it's early. He must be at home. That is, if he isn't still in bed.
Mr. Holmes is always up early, but he doesn't like to be disturbed at this hour. Now, if you give me...
Now, look here, that's enough. Let me in. I didn't come all this way to argue with a common washerwoman on a doorstep.
Common washerwoman, indeed.
The rooms are upstairs. Very well, I'll find my own way.
You can't charge him like this, sir. You want to know who you are and what your business is. It's my job to look after him and see that he isn't put upon by the likes of people like you.
Come in, quiet.
Yes, what is it?
This man pushed his way in, sir, and he demands to see you. Mr. Holmes, I couldn't keep him out.
That's all right. Thank you, Mrs. Hudson. You may come back to clear breakfast in 10 minutes.
Oh, common washerwoman indeed.
Come in, Mr. Corbett. Take a seat. You know Dr. Watson?
How do you do?
No, I don't know, Watson, but I'm glad to see you remember me, Holmes. We've met a couple of times at the club, haven't we?
That is correct. May I ask the purpose of this surprise visit? Oh, it's all right. You may speak freely in front of my friend. I have no secrets from him. Well?
I'm being persecuted, and I want you to put a stop to it.
Persecuted? You mean someone is threatening you? You're in bodily danger in some way? A threat to your well-being? Then why not go to the police?
Oh, no. There's nothing tangible for the police to get their teeth into. It's far too subtle. The fact is that since my good friend and ex-partner James Beresford killed himself, someone's been... persecuting me. I've received a note. Here, I'll show it to you. It was delivered at the club. It's a stupid joke, of course, someone with a perverted sense of humour. It's written, as you can see, as though it came from Jimmy Beresford. The handwriting is the same.
My dear Corbett, if you know this is just a malicious trick, then why not burn it and forget the whole matter?
Because it won't stop there. It hasn't. I'm being watched, followed. I know I am. And I've seen him. Not once or twice, but several times.
Seen him? Seen whom?
Well, someone, disguised as Jimmy. Okay, coming out of the fog. Why, only yesterday I banged into him. I could have sworn it actually was him. Tall, big, dressed in the way that Jimmy always dressed. Even the same cigars, the smell. The fact is that someone's trying to scare me, break my concentration.
If that was the objective, it certainly succeeded. You seem very distrait.
Well, it's getting on my nerves. Well, of course it is. I'm too busy a man to be bothered by such petty things. I'm going to get married soon. I don't... This going on a moment longer. You've got to stop it, Holmes.
I fail to see quite what I can do.
Well, catch whoever it is behind all this. I'll pay you any amount of money you want. Now, look, today is Tuesday. And in that blasted note, it says that whoever it is going to call on me at 9 o'clock on Thursday.
Well?
Well, here's your chance. You've got 2 days. Now, catch whoever it is that's tormenting me. Arrest him. Hunt him out. Scare the living daylights out of him. Warn him that if this persecution continues, he'll be dealt with. I don't quite know what methods you can use. I don't care. Just tell me how much you want to offer me complete protection.
Mr. Corbett, I'm a private detective. I only deal in very important criminal matters. I am not a bodyguard. And cases like this are of no interest to me whatsoever.
You mean you won't take the case?
May I clear now, sir?
I do not consider that there is a case, Corbett. Yes, Mrs. Hudson, you may take away the breakfast things and see this gentleman to his carriage.
Oh, very well. But you'll be sorry for all this. And I don't need that creature to show me out. Goodbye.
Well, we've had some ill-mannered people in these here rooms, Mr. Holmes, but he must rate as the worst chink. Novi rich, that's what the French should call him.
I am inclined to agree, but forget it, Mrs. Holmes.
But he called me a common washerwoman and a creature.
It really doesn't matter.
That's all very well. But people in glass houses shouldn't try to put the straw that broke the camel's back through the eye of a needle.
A plethora of mixed metaphors, Mrs. Hudson, but you made your point.
Ta!
After Max Corbett left, Holmes was strangely silent. He returned to his seat by the fire and relit his pipe. He knew far more than he'd told me, and wasn't going to tell me more. I packed my things and prepared to leave on my daily rounds. As I put on my overcoat and gloves, he said,
"You will be free this evening, won't you, Watson?"
"No, I have no appointments, but I doubt if I shall be home before 7.
That's all right. Ample time to get over to Eaton Square by 9.
Where Corbett lives. We're to pay a call upon him?
That's right. Although I'm quite sure he will have another unexpected visitor before then, but we must be ready for all emergencies.
A young lady to see you, sir. Her card.
Oh, thank you. Miss Gillian Marsh, secretary to Mr. James Beresford. What's the time here?
8 o'clock, Mr. Corbett.
Oh, all right. Show in.
Very good, sir. This way, please, miss.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Corbett.
Good evening.
I don't think we've met. I was Mr. Beresford's secretary. I have called because I wanted to know if you could help me. Have you any similar work for me to do? I'm very experienced in your type of business, and I'm now unemployed. I'd be grateful for some help.
Well, sit down, Miss Marsh. This seems a most odd time for you to call, hardly business hours. But let's not bother about that. You say you worked for Jimmy Beresford. I never saw you in his office.
I worked for him at his home. I was a private secretary.
I see. Then you must know all his correspondence. Tell me, Miss Marsh, have you ever seen this note before?
James Beresford's writing. Shall see you, Eaton Square. Call on Tuesday evening. Exactly at 9.
What's that? Tuesday evening? No, it says Thursday evening.
Oh, no, you're mistaken. I know this writing. It's Tuesday.
But that's today. I made all the preparations for Thursday. I'm going to Paris that morning. It can't be Tuesday. It can't be. It's 8 o'clock.
And Jimmy will be here within the hour. I'll leave you to face him, Mr. Corbett.
No, don't go. Please don't. I have to think. You see, I've been having the strangest hallucinations. I've been seeing Beresford ever since he died. He's been standing on street corners, at the club, getting out of carriages, just standing there, haunting me. And now he's supposed to be coming here within the hour. Are you sure that note says Tuesday?
Of course. Look for yourself. How odd. Of course, even the signature could be misinterpreted. Instead of Jimmy, it could be Jilly. Oh, I'd realized that before.
Before? You mean you've seen this note before? Now, tell me. Tell me all about it. I pay you well. Anything you can do to put my mind at rest. Just prove this is a stupid, malicious joke, and I'll set my mind at rest. Please help me.
You really are frightened, aren't you? Frightened that the doorbell will ring, and through that door will walk the ghost of James Beresford to torment your soul. Well, all right. I'll set your crooked little mind at rest. No one will be coming here.
How do you know?
Because I wrote that note. I wrote it after he died. You see, I wasn't his secretary. I am his niece. Uncle Jimmy was one of the best. You had him hunted down and you were glad when he was killed. Well, I wanted to make you suffer as he must have suffered. I could imitate Uncle's handwriting. I did it because I wanted to see what kind of a man you were. I've proved it. You are a cheap coward.
Oh, is that so? Indeed. Well, don't think that a chit of a girl like you is going to show me up. You think you've taught me a lesson? Well, I'll teach you now, here and now. I'll show you to start with.
How dare you! How dare you! Stop! Just stop it!
Just show me up, will you? You little vixen over here. How's this?
Right, that's enough, Corbett. Leave her alone. Watson, take care of him.
Come on. Who do you want me to deal with you?
You all right, Miss Marsh?
Yes, I'm all right.
Maximilian! Just what does all this mean?
Abigail. Well, how did you... Why are you here?
I was asked by Mr. Sherlock Holmes to come here this evening. He said I would learn something to my advantage. I seem to have done so. I'm leaving. I have nothing to say to you now, and I shall have nothing to say to you in the future.
But I can explain all this. I can explain. It's a trick.
Perhaps, Miss Stratton, you would like to take this note. It will explain that what you have seen was premeditated. Max always plans everything, down to the last detail.
Thank you. I'm grateful I found out the worst before it's too late. Good night, gentlemen. Goodbye, Maximilian.
It wasn't until we were back at Baker Street that Holmes confessed his part in the unmasking of Max Corbett. He puffed at his pipe with satisfaction.
You see, I agreed with Gillian Marsh. Something should be done to curb this man's ambitions. So I plotted with her to show up the weaker side of his nature. I even impersonated James Beresford. I'm quite good at disguises, you know, and could well remember how the man looked and walked. Then, when we had preyed upon his mind long enough, we brought things to a climax, making sure that his fiancée, Abigail Stratton, saw what kind of a man he really was. Now, rumours will spread after this. I should think it will be many long days before he dares show his face at the Diogenes Club, for instance. Hardly a criminal case, I agree, but one where I think justice has been done. Don't you agree, Watson?
Oh, Joe, yes, very clever, although perhaps not entirely ethical.
Well, the man is defeated in a much more gracious manner than he has defeated many others. My conscience is quite clear.
Listen again next Sunday to The Stories of Sherlock Holmes, with Graham Armitage as Holmes and Kerry Jordan as Dr. Watson.
The housebreaker lapse any moment. Please, get back. Get back.
Another ain't gonna be safe. That's a third one. He can't be double. It ain't right. It can't be an accident.
Yeah, you're right. How we got the police in on this? Who knows whose home is going to go next? Oh, there's a maniac in these parts, I reckon. Someone who delights in causing fire.
Maniac or not, there's got to be a stop to all this. None of us is safe in our beds. It's a man of investigation. That's what we must do.
We present The Stories of Sherlock Holmes.
Tonight,
the Lulworth Cove mystery.
The summer of 1895 was a particularly hot one by English standards. Well over 80 in the shade for weeks on end, or so it seemed. I found it particularly trying, for I was aware that most of my patients were feeling the effects of the heat. Those with serious complaints were enfeebled by long hours of perspiring in bed, and others had their minor troubles aggravated by the bad tempers of their families. I was fairly irritable myself when one day I returned to Baker Street to find Holmes sharing a cool jug of lemonade with a young gentleman I'd not met before.
Ah, Watson, come in, my dear fellow. You must be exhausted. Put your feet up. Have a glass of cold lemonade. Meet young Inspector Gavin.
Oh, how do you do, Inspector?
It's a great pleasure to meet you, Dr. Watson. I've heard so much about you, of course. Gavin is from Dorset. I knew his father. He was at Scotland Yard, and Gavin's determined to follow in his footsteps.
A long way to go yet, Mr. Holmes. I've only just been made inspector, and trust my luck, I've been landed with an almost impossible task.
Yes, you were just about to tell me about it when Watson arrived. Take the lemonade, Watson. It really is most refreshing.
Oh, thank you. Yes, it is.
Do speak freely in front of Watson. He's been by my side through more cases than I care to remember. Now tell us, what is it that's troubling you?
Well, as you know, I'm attached to headquarters in Dorchester, and we receive reports of all cases that happen along the coast of Dorset. Recently, our attention has been drawn to a series of fires at Lulworth Cove. Actually, it's a fairly small, closed community. There are a string of summer cottages that are shut up during the winter months and open up on holidays and during the summer by their owners or guests who rent them. Well, about a year ago, one of these summer cottages was burned to the ground. No one was able to find a specific cause for the fire. In the end, it was thought that a tramp had broken into the place and somehow caused the blaze.
Is that what the owner thought? Did he claim insurance?
Yes, it was a very modest amount. Algernon Francis was the owner's name. He moved some of the rescued furniture neighbors had managed to get out of the fire into a nearby house and decided to live there until he could rebuild on the previous site. But this fire was only the first of a shocking series. Several more houses along the coastline were altogether or partially destroyed, including Algernon Francis' temporary home.
That's most interesting. Pray continue.
Oh, naturally, the local people were up in arms, and particularly when they thought that they had found a reason for the fires. You know better than I do, Mr. Holmes, that the place to pick up gossip is in the local pub. And the local pub at Lulworth Cove is the Seagull's Nest. A meeting extraordinary was held there, presided over by Mr. William Spaulding, a middle-aged bachelor who lives alone in his family home on the cliffs and, being of independent means, gives most of his time to civic and philanthropic enterprises. He had the full support of the locals.
It must be clear to everyone that all of these fires cannot have been caused by accident.
You're right, yes, very clear.
The incidents are assuming the proportions of a social disaster. Why are these fires occurring? It must be the work of a single person or a select number of people. But there is another reason for setting fire to a house. It can't be insurance, as it applies to too many owners and their insurance companies.
If it's the work of a madman, then it don't need no reason, do it?
Yeah. But there is evidence that certain items of value have not been found after the fire. Articles of value, paintings, furniture, and family silver have not been recovered. Now, supposing the fires were simply a cover-up for important burglaries, how about that?
What can we do about it? We must take prompt measures against any repetition of these dastardly crimes. I suggest a citizens' emergency committee. Guards to be posted at various points. A patrol system in direct touch with the police.
Splendid idea. Spaulding must be the chairman of the committee, of course.
I second that. Let's form the committee straight away.
I don't mind, yes.
So, Spaulding was elected and immediately made application to Dorchester for help. I was sent down and made inquiries. But quite honestly, Mr. Holmes, I'm baffled. Nothing else has happened. By that, I mean that there have been no new fires. But the place has turned into a village of suspicion. Neighbor is turning against neighbor, friend against friend. It's becoming a place of locked doors, drawn curtains, and whispered suspicion.
Yes, I can understand that.
The fact is that I am now known in the district. And wherever I go, people are so cautious that I can get nowhere. I was wondering if you and Dr. Watson wouldn't consider taking a few days off and coming down to Dorset. You could stay at the Seagull's Nest and, well, perhaps pick up a few clues that may help me. I'm anxious to prove myself for this case. Anything you advise will be of great value.
Well, I do admit that the problem is an intriguing one. Naturally, you feel the pyromaniac is a local man.
I beg your pardon?
The pyromaniac. A person who causes fires. The arsonist.
Yes, must be local. Otherwise, how would he know what was of value in these houses?
Right. Well, Watson, what do you say?
Well, I'd very much like a few days off down by the sea, especially to get out of London in this heat. I shan't have much to attend to over the weekend. Yes, I'm all for it.
That's good. Then our answer is yes. We shall be delighted to stay at the Seagull's Nest if we can get in there.
Oh, I'll see to that. I'll have a word with Adam Geary. He's the landlord. Nice enough old fellow, but crippled with rheumatism and gets about in a wheelchair. His daughter is Anne Geary, who's a tower of strength in the community. And there is a third member of the household in that pub. His name is Pat Boyce, and I'm very much afraid that he's the fly in the ointment, as it were.
Oh, in what way?
Well, I suppose every English country village is supposed to have one. He's a bit simple-like, weak in the head, the village idiot. He can't speak all that well. He never makes much sense. Anne can look after him, and she can get things out of him, but no one else can. Of course, you can imagine that lots of the locals think he is the cause of all the trouble. The pyromaniac, as you call him.
Do you think that, Captain?
No, I don't. But, well, you come down and make up your own mind, Mr. Holmes. Shall I make a definite booking for you?
2 days later, we were down in Lulworth Cove, Dorset. The weather was still hot and the skies cloudless, but the sea breezes were wonderful, and the Gull's Nest a most entrancing old inn. Adam Geary and his daughter Anne made us most welcome, and of course, it wasn't long before the mystery of the outbreak of the fires was discussed.
All is quiet at the moment, of course, but there's many who thinks it's just the lull before the storm.
Oh, no, Dad, that's no way to think about it. Rather say that the precautions that we've been taking have had the desired effect. Mr. Spaulding has done a wonderful job of the organisation. Every citizen who belongs knows exactly where he or she has got to be when they go on duty. I'm sure it's having the desired effect.
But if this man who caused the fires is in some way mentally unbalanced, then surely he must be apprehended, regardless of whether there are more outbreaks or not.
Ah, that's what I say.
Well, that's the work of the police. We're just protecting our own homes. And perhaps it'll stop now.
All damage has still been done. Well, imagine what it'd be like if this pub were to catch fire. Me in this stern wheelchair, unable to get out.
Oh, no, that's enough, Dad. Why must you always look on the black side? Oh, have you had sufficient, Mr. Holmes? Dr. Watson? If so, then I'll be clearing away. Oh, would you like another helping?
Oh, an excellent supper, thank you.
No more for me, thank you. It was splendid.
My God, darling boy, how many times I told you not to burst into a private parlour like that, eh?
Oh, no, calm down, Patsy. Quiet now. Don't try to speak. Just be quiet. That's it. Now, these are 2 new guests staying here at the inn. This is Mr. Sherlock Holmes, and this is Dr. Watson. Now, you will smile and touch your cap whenever you see them. You do so now?
Good evening, Patrick.
Good evening.
Oh, get him out of here, Anne. You're embarrassing our guest. Get him out.
Please, not at all. As a medical man, I'm used to dealing with all kinds of people like this. The main thing is that these people are not to be frightened. Now, just ask him to sit down.
Oh, how very pleased I am to hear you say that, Dr. Watson. The people here don't understand, Pat. They think because he's slow that he doesn't understand. But he's brighter than anyone thinks. Now, sit down, Patrick. If there's anything to tell me, you'll do so better if you sit quietly first. Oh, gracious. Now what?
Adam, Anne, come on, there's another fire. The cottage up on the far side of the cove. The light all over. Come on, everyone. We need every hand on the job.
I can hardly describe the scene near the beach at Lulworth Cove. By the time we reached the burning cottage, half the local population was there. The fire had got a good hold, but a bucket chain was formed, and it was soon brought under control. Men rushed to and fro, helping to salvage furniture and valuables from the rooms. Eventually, the fire brigade moved us all away, and tired and exhausted, our clothes and bodies covered with ash and water, we realized our task was over. Holmes was able to ask a few questions.
Anyone know who raised the alarm, the first to see the flames?
I did. I can see this place clear enough from my cottage across there. First I thought it was the sunset reflected in the windows. Then I realized it was a fire inside the front room. I came on over to confirm this.
There was no one about?
Didn't see anyone. Then that young simpleton Pat Royce came down from behind the cliff. I sent him to raise the alarm in the main village while I got the neighbors out. We've been working like slaves ever since.
Who does the place belong to?
A friend of mine, Major Higgins. He's away up north at the moment. I'll have to send him a wire first thing in the morning. Oh, it's a sorry mess. No mistake.
I agree. You've done an excellent job of work. What is your name, by the way?
Hall, Alex Hall.
Well, perhaps you'd like to call in at the Seagull's Rest for a pint of beer, Mr. Hall. I'd be very pleased to stand you a drink.
And I'd be very pleased to accept one. Give me half an hour to clean myself up and I'll be over.
The bar trade at the Seagull's Nest was extremely busy that evening. So much so that when Inspector Gavin arrived, Holmes suggested that a handful of us retire to the small private parlour, taking our beers with us. It was there that the questioning continued.
I take it that quite a lot of Major Higgins' furniture and valuables have been saved.
Yes, thank goodness.
Poor man. Only been away a couple of days. It was well planned, all right. No one on duty at that time of the afternoon.
Oh, wicked shame. Something's got to be done. You seem to be making no progress at all, Inspector. We're supposing to be here with me in my wheelchair.
We're doing our best, Mr. Geary.
That's right. That's enough of that, Dad. Let's concentrate upon what has happened, not what might happen.
The thing is that I know now that it's definitely a planned fire to cover for a robbery.
How do you know that, Mr. Holmes?
Because I know the Major's house. I know that he has a large grandfather clock in his sitting room. Well, I was one of the first to get into the place when the fire started. The clock wasn't there. It had been stolen before the place was set alight.
Well, that's a valuable clue. You're sure of this?
Of course I'm sure. It has the most distinctive chime. A very fine piece of work. And it wasn't there.
That's most interesting. I imagine a grandfather clock is not an easy thing to steal. Ah, Mr. Spaulding, do come in.
I heard you'd all gathered here. I feel it's my duty as chairman of the Citizens Emergency Committee to demand that you question the boy, Pat Royce, Inspector.
Pat? What for?
Well, it's clear that he's involved in some way. He's always around on the scene of these fires before anyone else. The poor lad is soft in the head and probably doesn't know what he's doing. Dr. Watson here's a medical man, and he will bear me out when I say that many deranged people are fascinated by fire. It's a known fact.
Well, I don't know that I can agree with that, Mr.
And I most certainly cannot. I'm surprised at you, William, I really am. Just because Pat's back wouldn't can't answer for himself, you naturally pick on him. It's grossly unfair.
Now, Annie, we must face facts. We really must.
Oh, it's no use, Inspector, trying to get the news out of Pat. You know how frightened he gets. The fire's scared him. He won't be able to talk, even to me, for some time. If there's any questioning to do, I think I should do it. But please don't disturb him tonight.
It's up to you, Inspector, but the folk in these parts have had enough. If they do find the person responsible, then I won't answer for their actions. There could be a lynching. Tempers are that high.
There will be nothing of the kind, and I refuse to be pushed into making irresponsible accusations. I shall conduct this investigation in my own way, methodically and as thoroughly as possible. It will mean personal interviews with everyone concerned, alone. I think mass meetings only stir up hysteria. Now, having said that, I should like to start with you, Miss Geary. Will everyone else please return to the bar? I shall call you all in turn. You and Dr. Watson will stay, won't you, Mr. Holmes?
And so the questioning continued in a more reasonable manner. The inspector interviewed some dozen of the local people who lived near the scene of the latest fire. Holmes listened intently, sprawled in a chair by the open window, his head upon his chest and long fingers pressed together. He made no comment and eventually retired for the night in a somber mood. I found it hard to sleep, and when I did, my mind was filled with the sight of flames and the smell of burning timber. Morning dawned crisp and clean, and Anne Geary served us an excellent breakfast.
I've been talking to young Pat, Mr. Holmes. He's in a rare state. Couldn't get much out of him. But he says he saw someone leaving Major Higgins' garden just before that fire started, yesterday.
Ah, that's most interesting. Were you able to get an identification from the lad?
Not yet. He goes all to pieces when he tries to explain. Takes ages for him to calm down. But I'll try and have a good long talk to him later. I'll take him to church. He likes church. Has a soothing effect upon him. Oh, he isn't at all a violent boy. I'm sure he didn't start the fire. You don't believe he did? Do you, Mr. Holmes?
No, I'm quite sure that he didn't.
Oh, thank goodness for that. Well, I'll be getting a bit of work. I'll talk to Pat after church, and I'm sure I can get him to give me a description of the man he saw. Would you like another pot of tea?
Holmes and I spent a pleasant morning walking along the seashore. As we returned, we passed the church and noticed Anne Geary talking to a group of her friends. Pat Boyce, neatly dressed, stood respectfully to one side. Later, they walked off in opposite directions. Anne wasn't present at lunch. And it was late afternoon, while we were smoking our pipes in the back garden of the inn, before we saw Pat Boyce again. He suddenly appeared in the most terrible state of excitement, crying and stuttering and throwing his arms about. Oh, gracious, what is it? What's happened, Pat, now? Calm down, my boy.
He's trying to tell us something. He's pointing over there across the field. Wasn't there something seriously wrong? This boy's in a dreadful state. Let him take us over there. Convince him that we will follow him.
I did my best. Pat seemed to understand and ran ahead, pausing and pointing and waving while we hurried after him. Some half-mile across the fields, he stopped and pointed to a disused shed. He refused to go near. When Holmes and I entered...
There's nothing in here. This hut isn't used for anything. Wait. Look, Watson, look there, on those sacks.
It's Anne Geary. Oh, great heavens, Holmes. Blood. A head She's been most brutally murdered. News spread over the district at lightning speed. The whole of Lulworth Cove was in a state of panic, and people streamed towards the police station. Inspector Gavin called for more men from Dorchester and Weymouth. There was a general clamour for the arrest of Pat Boyce, but Holmes would have none of it.
It's clear to me, Gavin, that Anne was murdered by the arsonist. Now, young Pat is not responsible for those fires. To start with, he hasn't the natural guile or intelligence to work out when to start the fires and be unobserved. Added to that, there is proof that they were intended to disguise a burglary. Pat Boyce could never steal valuable property and hope to dispose of it. No. The answer does not lie with him.
Then who is responsible, Holmes? And why was Anne Geary killed?
She was killed because she got part of the truth out of young Pat. And the arsonist became aware that she knew too much. Yes, I think it's time we had another talk to the man Alex Hall, Gavin. Perhaps you can arrange for him to visit Mr. Spaulding's home and talk there. Shall we say it just before 8 this evening? Can you organise that, Gavin?
Inspector Gavin was able to organise the meeting. I think we were all surprised, including William Spaulding. But he made us very welcome.
Well, gentlemen, this is a great pleasure.
You knew her well, didn't you, Mr. Hall?
Not as well as I should have liked. She was in love with someone else. She told me so. I don't know who it was.
Perhaps you can tell us, Mr. Spaulding.
Me? Why, no, of course not. I liked the woman, but there was no...
Wait a moment. Listen.
A clock striking. But I know that sound. The chimes, they're like the clock that belongs to Major Higgins. Where is it coming from?
From above. A grandfather clock in an attic. Odd, don't you think? Care to show us the rest of your house, Mr. Spaulding? Every room, please.
No, look here. You go right.
Upstairs in an attic, they found many objects of value. Silver, fine old china, and pieces of period furniture, amongst which was the grandfather clock. Spaulding admitted to the thefts and to the crime of arson, but denied killing Anne Geary. But Holmes said...
He will break down under cross-examination. He's clearly mentally disturbed. I suspected him the moment he took over the chairmanship of that committee. He was able then to know the exact movements of the fire guards. He was also clearly on intimate terms with Anne Geary. She was the only one who called him William, and he called her Annie. I think there'll be no more troubles in Lulworth Cove after this, thank goodness.
Thanks to you, Mr. Holmes.
Oh, no, I don't want my name mentioned at all. This is your first successful case, isn't it? Congratulations.
Listen again next Sunday to The Stories of Sherlock Holmes, with Graham Armitage as Holmes and Kerry Jordan as Dr. Watson.
It's a most interesting experiment, Watson. Pray do examine the snake.
I'd rather not, if you don't mind, Holmes. My experience in Afghanistan and that dreadful case of the speckled band have taught me to have a healthy respect for snakes.
Yes, but look at it. It's dead. Well, at least it has the appearance of being so. A snake, like some other reptiles and animals, hibernates. There is no pulse. The temperature of the body is extremely cold, yet it is alive. This is most interesting. Yes, to my scientific mind, man is still an animal, so why can't we bring about this condition in our fellow men? Professor Julius Waldhausen is calling to see me this morning. He claims that it is possible.
We present The Stories of Sherlock Holmes.
The Waldhausen Experiment. The autumn of 1887 was grey and gloomy. The trees knew winter would be dark and bitter. They shed their leaves early, and the cold drizzle swirled the dead masses into the gutterings of the rooftops, into the blocked drains and dirty manholes of the London streets. It was a depressing time, a time for crackling log fires and indoor comforts. On one such dreary morning, I came down to breakfast to find Holmes seated at his workbench. Mrs. Hudson's excellent meal lay neglected upon the table. Holmes was hard at work on the body of a snake.
Yes, as I say, most interesting. Take a look, Watson. You must agree with me.
Well, I think I prefer my breakfast, Holmes. Surely you can leave that wretched reptile for a cup of hot coffee.
By all means, Watson. At least I'm sure that the creature will not slither away. But you haven't answered my question. Do you think it possible to place a human being in a state of suspended life?
As a medical man, I must say that I do not, Holmes. It's entirely against nature.
Well, one could argue that pain-killing with anesthetics is exactly the same, Watson. And yet they're making enormous strides in such practices. That is the doorbell. It must be my visitor, Professor Waldhausen. Well, it's time for you to answer my second question. Are you interested in hearing this man's theories?
Well, I'm certainly not leaving until I've finished my breakfast. I assume you will not be above offering him a cup of coffee?
Of course not. And keep your ears open, Watson. I would like your opinion.
There's a gentleman here to see you, Mr. Holmes. No card. Couldn't catch the name. Professor somebody or other.
Professor Waldhausen, yes. Show him in, please, Mrs. Hudson.
Very good, sir. This way, please.
Thank you very much. Mr. Sherlock Holmes, and this must be the well-known physician, Dr. John Watson.
That is so. Good morning to you, Professor.
Pray do be seated. There's a coat rack near the door for your wet coat. Come near the fire. Would you like to join us at breakfast?
I have already eaten, but a cup of coffee would be most pleasant.
Allow me.
Please make yourself at home. I'm afraid the place isn't very tidy.
Well, compared to my own home, it is neatness itself. I am afraid I drive my two assistants to much anger with my ways.
You have assistants? And they help you in the experiments which you wrote to me about?
Yeah, that is correct. I see you have the sleeping snake curled up on this tray on the table. You are interested in suspended life, Mr. Holmes?
In hibernation of animal life, yes. No one can doubt the existence of such patterns, but I know nothing of your experiments with human beings.
I am no monster, Mr. Holmes. I have made no such experiments. I am no Frankenstein from the pages of Mrs. Shelley's novel. But I have carried out many tests on many pets, cats, dogs, and even farm animals. I have had them declared legally dead by veterinary surgeons. And then, much to their amazement, I have, by a simple injection of a serum, brought them back to life with no harm done whatever. I think it is possible that this can be done with human beings. Does that amaze you, Dr. Watson?
Well, frankly, yes, it does. While keeping an open mind upon the subject, I must say I can't see any valid reason for wishing to bring this about. I mean, in what circumstances could it be of use?
Travel.
Travel?
Oh, yes. One of these days, man will travel out into what we call space. I believe within 100 years we shall have set foot on the moon.
Oh, come now. That really is something from the pages of a novel. That will never be possible. What do you say, Holmes?
As you say, Watson, it's best to keep an open mind. But to return to your theories, Professor, you feel that man cannot only conquer space but also time? You believe that one can suspend life and return from the dead, say a year later, without having aged in any way?
Yeah, exactly. I am sure of this. There are very few men of your precise knowledge and imagination in London, Mr. Holmes. I invite you to examine my experiments at any time. My home and laboratories are at Harrow Lodge, Main Road, Hatch End. My assistants are Dr. John Rossiter and his wife Eileen, both qualified scientists. They are helping me with my work. I should be ready for a demonstration in 10 days, a fortnight. Will you both attend? I should be most honored if you would. Do say you agree.
Holmes assured the professor that we would attend any future demonstration of his experiments, and I left them to do my daily rounds. Frankly, I thought the old fellow a rather dangerous eccentric. Holmes reserved his judgment and continued his own studies. I was far too busy with my work to bother much about the professor, and soon forgot his invitation, until one day... Oh, goodness gracious me, what a tragedy. Oh, Professor Waldhausen's been found dead. Oh, Holmes, he's died in his sleep, natural causes, and there's no suspicion of foul play. You read this, Holmes?
I have indeed, Watson. I sent a telegram of condolence to his home and a request that I be allowed to visit his assistants, Dr. Rossiter and his wife, this very afternoon. If you're not overworked, perhaps you'd care to accompany me. I agree with you that if this be a natural death, then it's extremely sad news, for I sincerely believe that the professor was on the verge of an outstanding discovery with his experiments. Yes, well, shall we try to find out more, Watson?
As always, when requested to accompany Sherlock Holmes on any of his investigations, I managed to find the time to do so. And because the weather was so inclement, we took a four-wheeler straight from Baker Street to Hatch End. It was a blustery, uncomfortable journey, and I wondered if it really was worthwhile. We arrived at Harrow Lodge to find Rossiter and his wife Eileen in a state of near despair.
I'm sorry to welcome you like this, Mr. Holmes.
It's been a very great shock. My wife and I are at our wits' end. It was the one thing we did not expect.
The professor was not a young man, but he seemed in good health. We were all working so happily. There was so much at stake, and to have something like this end it all.
Must have been very upsetting for you both. Tell me, you were privy to all the professor's theories?
To most of his experimental work, yes. We worked as a team. But there were a great deal of his latest ideas that he wrote in German. Just notes, you understand. We were simply here to follow his instructions. I felt all the time that he was progressing beyond himself and urged him to rest. Perhaps it was overwork.
You had a doctor? The death certificate, what did it say?
Well, it just says heart failure. A natural death in his sleep.
We neither of us have a regular doctor. We called the police. They took over. The police surgeon assured us it was a simple case of heart failure. Well, at least he didn't suffer.
He had no near family? Wife? Children? Any relatives?
No one. I believe there was a sister in Australia or South Africa many years ago, but he'd lost touch.
Then can I assume that you are to inherit from his death?
Oh, my dear Holmes, I happen to know all about the professor's estate. It's nothing. This house is mortgaged up to the hilt. There are a few sticks of furniture which belong to Eileen and myself, but his finances are negligible. In a word, he was penniless. There may even be a few debts. That will be up to us to clear up. We shall try our best.
I see. Well, I presume that he had a lawyer and that all the funeral arrangements have been taken care of?
Oh, yes. Thompson and White in Half Moon Street, London, handle all these affairs. I actually recommended Thompson myself, and the funeral is to be held the day after tomorrow. I hope you can find time to attend. It's in Great Harrow Church.
I shall certainly do my best. Now, if you're sure I can be of no more help...
I'm afraid not. But thank you for your sympathy. We do appreciate it. Don't we, dear?
Yes, of course. There's nothing you or anyone else can do. After all, we can't bring him back.
No.
Can we?
Good day to you, Mr. Holmes. Dr. Watson, and thank you again for calling like this. Well, they've gone. Do you think we did the right thing in keeping our secret from them?
Yes, of course.
Are you still prepared to go through with it?
Naturally. Oh, John, we can't give up now. The fact that the professor's dead makes it even more urgent. We must go through with our plans. How are we going to live otherwise? I'm not afraid.
Oh, my sweet, courageous Eileen. What would I do without you? Very well. We carry on. We must make detailed plans this very day. Then all you have to do is trust me. You do trust me, don't you?
With my life, darling.
Sherlock Holmes was not entirely satisfied by our visit to Hatch End, but he refused to discuss the matter, although, much to my surprise, he insisted that we return 2 days later to attend the funeral. This time we took the train down, and once again it was a squally wet day. The service and burial was simple and mercifully short. A handful of people only left the churchyard in the soaking rain.
Oh, dear. What a miserable affair.
You really shouldn't have attended, darling. You should be home in bed. Don't you agree, Dr. Watson?
You certainly seem extremely unwell, Mrs. Rossiter. I should advise an immediate return home, a hot bath, and a few days in bed. You say you haven't a personal physician?
No, but it's all right. I'm sure it's nothing but a very bad cold.
Yes, well, you'd better not hang about in the rack. Good day to you, Mrs. Rossiter.
Good day, Dr. Watson. Bye, Mr. Holmes.
Good day, Dr.
Goodbye.
Goodbye, Mrs. Rossiter. Mrs. Rossiter. We'll be in touch.
Yes.
You are Mr. James Thompson of Half Moon Street, is that so?
Yes, that's right. And you're Mr. Sherlock Holmes. I'm sorry we've met under such sad circumstances. Are you returning to London?
About a 12:10 train, yes.
Then perhaps we can travel together. I have a cab waiting in Church Lane to take me to the station. Oh, will you join me?
Our meeting with James Thompson had all happened so naturally that I couldn't believe it had been contrived. And yet Sherlock Holmes, with his usual diplomacy, managed to get far more information out of the lawyer on our train journey home than I would have dreamed possible. It was almost as though he'd arranged the whole thing.
Oh, yes, it was Dr. Rossiter who introduced me to the professor. That was some time ago. A great tragedy. He was a very fine man and apparently a selfless worker. He gave everything to science and, well, made nothing out of it at all.
That's extremely sad. You mean he had nothing to leave in his will?
Not a penny. The Rossiters will be able to take over the laboratory, but the debts incurred will use up any capital.
It seems that pure science is not a profitable occupation. Research, such as the professor and his assistants do, should be conducted in some college or sponsored by a government organization.
Yes, I've often suggested that to Rossiter, but, well, he seems to think that these experiments are of a special kind. He has a little money of his own, of course, but how long that'll last in these new circumstances, I don't know.
He seems a very sensible young man. He must have some plans.
If he has, I know nothing of them. Apart from an extraordinarily large life assurance policy upon his wife, well, they seem to be drifting somewhat. Oh, but I shouldn't be discussing my client's affairs. Do forgive me. It's only done out of sheer concern.
Of course. Yes, I understand. Well, one can only hope that the future is kind to both of them. Now, look, you know my address. 221B Baker Street. If there's anything I can do for you or the Rossiters in the future, please don't hesitate to call upon me, Mr. Thompson.
With that, Holmes retired behind his newspaper, and Thompson and I made small talk for the rest of the journey back to town. Once again, I forgot the affair completely, until one morning, a week later.
Mr. James Thompson to see you, Mr. Holmes says it's urgent.
Oh, show him in, Mrs. Hudson. Show him in at once.
Pray do pardon this intrusion, Mr. Holmes. Dr. Watson, I had to call immediately. You will not have heard the terrible news. It's from Hat's End. Dr. Rossiter. His wife, Eileen. She has died.
What? Good gracious, when did this happen?
Yesterday evening. It seems that still she caught at the professor's funeral must have turned to pneumonia. After a short illness, she died at Harrow Lodge. I heard late last night.
This is a great tragedy, Thompson. Have you made full inquiries? I mean, who was the doctor? I presume they called one in.
Yes, a local man. There are only two in Hat's End. This fellow is Cyrus Mortimer. He was too late to get Eileen into hospital. By the time he got to her bedside, she was dead. Really, Mr. Holmes, it does seem as though that place is doomed to tragedy.
How has Rossiter taken it?
I gather he's most upset. He's coming here tomorrow to see if there's anything I can do, but it's really rather a waste of time. I thought you'd like to be told the news instead of reading about it in the obituary notices of the newspaper.
Yes, thank you for calling. It's good of you. I think I shall send a wire of condolence straight away. Perhaps if Rossiter comes up to town, he will also call upon me. Or if it's not too much of an imposition, maybe I can join him at your chambers.
By all means. It's most odd. I have the strangest feelings about these two deaths, Mr. Holmes. They're both from natural causes, of course, but I am disturbed about them. It makes me fear that, well, that perhaps John Rossiter's own life may be in danger. I know it sounds absurd, but, well, they say tragedy often strikes in threes, don't they? Well, I shall be at my offices all tomorrow morning. Rossiter is due at 11. Please feel free to join us at any time after that hour. And now I must go. There is much to be done. Oh, sad business. Yes, indeed, a sad business.
After James Thompson left us, Holmes sat for a long time in his chair by the fire, his unlit pipe clenched in his teeth and the fingers of his thin hands placed together. He stared at the flames,
stirring himself only to say...
It's not often that I'm tempted to agree with another person's intuitions, Watson. I'm a person who deals in facts only, but I'm inclined to agree with Thompson. There's so much missing, so much that cannot be explained. Oh, well, meanwhile, I shall return to my animal studies on hibernation.
Oh, Holmes, ever since the professor invited you to interest yourself in his experiments, you've become obsessed with the idea of suspended life. As a medical man, I'm used to seeing death as it really is. I can only say what I said in the beginning. It's a fantasy, and one far ahead of its time. Such things should be left alone, and that's that. Although I was quite dogmatic in my viewpoint, I still agreed to accompany Holmes the next morning to meet John Rossiter and give my condolences. Much to my surprise, Holmes appeared to be rather unsympathetic. He asked a great deal of questions that I personally thought unnecessary.
I do hope you have finished any business you've been discussing, Dr. Rossiter.
Yes, there isn't very much. Just a question of money for the funeral. 2 deaths in such a short time is a severe draining on my savings. Mr. Thompson has agreed to advance me a small loan upon my wife's life policy.
Ah, I see. When is the funeral to take place, may I inquire?
In 2 days' time. Arrangements have been made with the same funeral parlor as before, but Eileen is still lying at home, back at Harrow Lodge. I simply haven't been able to say goodbye to her. It is weak of me, I know. Now, if you would excuse me, I really must be getting back there. Thank you for your condolences, and thank you for your financial support, Mr. Thompson. You will excuse me now, won't you?
Yes, of course. I'll walk with you to the station, if I may, Dr. Rossiter.
Yes, of course.
Come, Watson.
I'll see you out, gentlemen. If there is anything further I can do, then please call upon me, won't you? A good day to you.
Good day, Mr. Thompson.
You must forgive me if I have seemed a little abrupt this morning, Dr. Rossiter. The fact is that I wished to ask you a few questions of a personal nature, not in front of Mr. Thompson.
Oh? I'm afraid I'm rather too upset to concentrate greatly. Can it not wait until some other time?
I'd like to clarify a few things in my mind, and there may not be another time. It's regarding your work, or rather the work that Professor Waldhausen left unfinished. He invited me to share an interest in his experiments in suspended life. He said he would confide in me his results. He was sure that the serum he had perfected would render a human being quite lifeless, but he would be able to return life to them with a suitable antidote of another serum. You must be familiar with his work.
I think I've already told you, Mr. Holmes, that I was working under his instructions. I know nothing positive about his experiments.
You do not propose to consider continuing work?
I do not. And what is more, now that my wife is dead, I shall sell everything I possess and travel abroad. America, most likely. Now, do excuse me. I have nothing more to say. Good day to you. Goodbye, Dr. Watson.
Goodbye.
We shall not meet again.
Say, Holmes, that was just rude of you. The poor fellow's bereaved but a day, and you've upset him enormously.
Yes, indeed I have. And yet...
Good gracious, what's this?
Carriage and horse out of control. Stand back, Watson. I can't head in this way. What the devil? Rossiter's crossing the road. Watch out! Watch out! Watch out!
It was all over so swiftly. The runaway horse and carriage knocked over John Rossiter. He disappeared under flying hooves and the heavy wheels. By the time the carriage had been stopped and order returned, I had examined the body. Rossiter was dead. He must have been killed instantly. And he's dead, Holmes. You're right. So was Thompson. It's a case where death comes in 3.
Watson, I don't wish to appear heartless, but there's a great deal more at stake here than it appears. We must summon the police and leave this all to them. You and I are taking a 4-wheeler and heading for Harrow Lodge. If my theory is correct, we may still be in time to prevent a third tragedy. Come along.
I couldn't think what Holmes had in mind, and as usual in these cases, he refused to elaborate. The cab was summoned, and the journey made to Hatch End in record time. There we pulled up in the driveway of the lodge, and Holmes accosted an elderly gardener who was brushing away dead leaves in the porch.
You must let us into the house. It's most urgent. You have a key?
Aye, but I can't be letting you in. Not till the master comes.
Your master won't be coming back, and it's important that we enter the house. I am a private detective and known to the police. I insist that you let us in immediately.
Well, this has been most irregular, but if you promise not to touch anything...
I make no promises, but I will take full responsibility. Hurry, man, hurry.
Reluctantly, The old gardener unlocked the front door, and Holmes immediately made his way to the professor's laboratory. I found the body of Eileen Rossiter laid out in a downstairs room. I examined her. She was dead, all right. In less than 5 minutes, Holmes was back with me. He carried a doctor's bag in one hand, and placing it on the table, said,
I hope I'm right, Watson. I'm sure I am. Here, look at this. Now, see. This, the white fluid in the tube. And this, the hypodermic syringe. Now, here, this is more your job than mine. Inject this into a main artery.
Holmes, are you serious? This woman's dead.
She is not. She only appears to be. Use the syringe.
With trembling hands, I did as Holmes had ordered. I could not believe in this fantastic experiment. After the injection, we stood at the trestle table for what seemed like hours before I noticed the color returning to the woman's cheeks. Shallow breathing started and gained in strength. And Eileen Rossiter was coming alive before our very eyes.
It's working, Watson. And she will live, after all. You see, while I do not doubt the professor's death is genuine, the Rossiters engineered this, using the serum and antidote to render this woman certified as dead. The plan being to claim the life insurance money and bring her back to life, then leave the country to start anew somewhere else. As you say, it's unbelievable. And an experiment that should never have been made. Poor woman. How she will start again after knowing of her husband's death, I can't imagine. But we've saved her life, Watson. She must make up her own mind how she uses it. Poor soul.
Listen again next Sunday to The Stories of Sherlock Holmes, with Graham Armitage as Holmes and Kerry Jordan as Dr. Watson.
Well, Holmes, Watson, this is a great pleasure for me to welcome you to the Villa Bartique here at Le Palais. I hope your stay on the island will be both comfortable and interesting. May you have a wonderful holiday, my friends.
Thank you, Andre.
Your very good health, and many thanks, Monsieur Lorient.
Oh, Andre, please, I'm only too proud that the Belle-Ile has...
Monsieur Help, the yacht, the Grey Goose. The captain sent me. The owner, Henry Buckley, he is sitting at the desk in his cabin, and he is dead.
We present The Stories of Sherlock Holmes.
The Grey Goose.
Sherlock Holmes and I were taking one of our very rare holidays abroad together. It was in the summer of 1883, and the weather was glorious. Holmes had just finished an international case in Geneva, in which he had managed to greatly help André Lorient, a French diplomat and businessman. Lorient showed his gratitude in practical terms, part of which was to press an invitation upon Holmes and me to visit his villa at Le Palais on the Belle-Ile. That comparatively little-known island in the Bay of Biscay was, in those days, quite unspoilt. And we were out to enjoy ourselves enormously, when, that lunchtime, a sailor from a British yacht lying at anchor out in the harbour came with an urgent request for help. As we were rowed from the shore, André Lorient exclaimed,
The yacht ahead is the Grey Goose. She is owned by Henri Barclay. You may have heard of him. Quite a rich man, in similar business to myself. He married a French girl, Marcel. They sail these waters quite regularly, as the Barclays have a house in Nantes. The captain of the Grey Goose is French, Yves Sarnard. There is a crew of 3 with Marcel and a male secretary.
She's a fine-looking yacht. You know this man Barclay well?
Reasonably well. I'm surprised to hear that he has died so suddenly. Although many years older than his wife, he always appeared in excellent health. But perhaps the captain can tell us the nature of the illness. I'm very glad you are with us, Watson. We are rather isolated on the island and have no skilled medical help.
I shall be happy to be of service to Madame Barclay.
Well, here we are. The captain is waiting for us. Come.
Monsieur, I help you.
Come. After you, Holmes. Watson.
Thank you.
We climbed aboard the Grey Goose and found the captain waiting for us. After the necessary introductions, he showed us down a small companionway into the master cabin. It was furnished as a comfortable lounge, but also had the air of a businessman's office. Our attention was immediately focused upon the desk. Sprawled across it was the body of Henry Barclay. His face was contorted in a death agony. His hands extended as though to clutch the sides of the writing blotter.
Nothing has been disturbed, Monsieur Leroy. The moment I was told of this, I locked the cabin door and sent ashore for you. I knew that you had 2 Englishmen staying with you. This yacht is registered in Great Britain, therefore it is British property. It has to be reported to the correct authorities that its owner has died.
I understand. Mr. Sherlock Holmes is a very famous detective. There will be no difficulties. He will take charge from now on.
Good. Meanwhile, I understand the good doctor, he can make the examination?
Yes, of course, if you wish me to.
It must have been a heart attack. If you will please, doctor.
One moment before you touch the body, Watson. May I make a few observations? To start with, I see that Mr. Barclay appeared to be writing a letter. May I... gently now, Watson. Let me slide the letter out from under the outstretched hands. Yes, it appears to be a business letter, addressed to the manager of Stewart Bank, London. It reads, Dear Mr. Mortimer, I've been going through my accounts and find from my passbook that I have 3 cheques cashed for £500 each. I cannot recollect ever having drawn this money on those days. They are cash to bearer cheques. Enclosed is the bank statement with the withdrawals concerned, marked with a cross. As I should be in Nantes for some months, I should be obliged if you would inquire through your clerks who cashed those cheques. That's if it's possible to trace the person in question. I'm sure that there has been some... Oh, here the letter breaks off. That's interesting. So this is what he was writing when the so-called heart attack took place.
So it would appear.
I think I should like to ask a few questions from the crew and your secretary before reporting this officially, Captain. Can you tell me how you came to be here, the purpose of this trip?
It is what we do every year. We leave Southampton and cruise down to the Mediterranean. Always we call in at Nantes to stay for a while at the house. But sometimes, if the weather is particularly fine, as it is now, we take our time and call in at the Belle-Île. Our voyage here was uneventful. We anchored here early, having arrived outside the harbor at dawn. None of us has been ashore. At about 11 o'clock, Mr. Barclay came down here to his cabin, giving orders that he was not to be disturbed until lunchtime. At noon, his steward knocked at the door with a tray of drinks. He entered. Mr. Barclay was writing, and he left the tray and went out. At 1 o'clock, he returned to say that the lunch was ready, and he found a body, just as you see it.
No one else has been in or out?
Not to my knowledge.
Very well. Well, I suggest we leave my good friend Watson to conduct his examination without interruption, while I have a talk to the steward and the secretary. Will that be convenient?
Oui, of course.
Good, then, lead on. Excuse us, Watson. Will you join us in the saloon when you're finished?
Yes, very well. I shouldn't be longer than half an hour.
Right you are. Pray proceed, Captain.
They left the cabin, and I was able to apply myself to the task ahead. I'd seen many dead men in my time and treated many sufferers of heart complaints. One look at the dead man's face told me it was not as straightforward as the captain thought. But I was careful not to jump to conclusions. I checked and rechecked as Holmes was taken aft to question the cabin steward at some length. And then...
It is just as I told you, Monsieur Holmes. I prepare Monsieur Barclay's drinks tray as usual. I take it in, and he looks at it, and he points to the table. I place it down and leave.
What was he doing at the time? Was he at the desk? Which table did you use?
Oh, he was writing at the desk. The table was the one under the starboard window. It is not a porthole, you understand. It opens out onto the deck.
Was the window or porthole open?
Oh, oui. With the weather like this and that anchor, natural.
Captain, I'm sorry to interrupt, but this is important. You must know. It wasn't heart failure that killed Mr. Barclay. He was poisoned.
What? Poison?
By what exact poison, I do not yet know, but I'm sure it was administered to him by means of a drink.
Poisoned, but who could have done such a thing?
I think that is what we are here to find out. Might I suggest we return to the cabin? I take it that you locked the door, Watson?
Yes, I have the key. Very well, steward. We shall not require you again at the moment. Please see that no one goes ashore.
Very good, Captain.
Perhaps I might interview the secretary in there. Could that be arranged also, Captain?
We returned to the cabin, and as we reached it, a tall, slender figure came striding down the companionway. It was the secretary, and to my utmost surprise, I found I knew him. Well, Dayton? David Dayton, surely James Dayton's son.
Good heavens, Dr. Watson. My father's old friend. Gracious me, what are you doing here, sir?
Well, Sherlock Holmes and I are staying with Monsieur Loyal on the island, and we were sent for in connection with Mr. Barclay's death. You his secretary?
Yes, that's right. I've been with him for a couple of years now. He found me useful because it's a British yacht and a French crew. Henry himself couldn't have been more English, but his wife is French. And as my mother was French, and I speak both languages equally well, I fit in rather well. Or rather, I did until this happened. Rotten luck. Yeah, a heart attack is the last thing I thought would have happened.
It wasn't a heart attack, David. He was poisoned.
You can't mean that. Poisoned? No. Has anyone told Mrs. Barclay? No, we have only just found out ourselves.
I need confirmation. There should be a post-mortem, but I'm prepared to stake my reputation that it was poison.
The steward knows, and therefore I think it's fair to assume that the rest of the crew know. Might I suggest that you're the best person to break this news to Mrs. Barclay, Captain? Perhaps you'd be good enough to do so straight away. And would you care to come inside, Mr. Dayton? I should like to ask you a few questions.
Yes, of course.
I think you said that you've been in Barclay's employ for 2 years. You must know his affairs extremely well. Who has charge of all his private papers, money, things like that?
They're kept in that safe. It's hidden behind the picture on the wall over there. Look, I'll show you. Here. There, the safe has a special lock. I have a key, and there's one on his watch chain. It's a special lock. Difficult to open unless you know how. No one else knows how to open that but Henry and myself.
I see. And his bank statements, empty check stubs, that sort of thing?
They're all in the safe. I saw them there myself only a few days ago.
I see. Would you mind opening the safe for me, please?
Of course. Though I can't really see why.
I think it is most important.
Excuse me. You are Mr. Holmes and Dr. Watson? I am Marcel Barclay. I met the captain. He told me the news. Is it true? Henri was killed? It was not a natural death?
I'm afraid it is true, yes.
Then you must find the person who poisoned him. Find him quickly, so that he too may die. I do not care what steps you take, or how much money is involved, but you must find out who killed my husband. And when you do, I shall take my revenge.
Madame Barclay was very clearly a Frenchwoman. She was extremely beautiful, dark hair and blue eyes that looked straight at you quite fearlessly. She seemed more angry than distressed by the news of her husband's death. She informed Holmes that she'd be in her cabin if he needed to speak to her, and then, with a long, inscrutable look at the body of her dead husband, she turned on her heel and left us. Holmes, after making sure the safe was unlocked, asked us to leave him while he searched the cabin. I found myself alone with David Dayton.
I'm sorry we have to meet in these dreadful circumstances, Dr. Watson. I find it all quite bewildering.
You can throw no light upon it at all? I mean, it's clear that your late employer was poisoned between the hours of 12 and 1 o'clock.
You mean that's when he took the drink? The steward took in the tray at that time. He always did. But if the poison was in the gin or the tonic, surely an examination of the contents of the bottles will show this.
Sherlock Holmes will find that out, have no fear. Of course, if the poison was simply sipped in bits of glass while he was unaware...
But no one visited the captain except the steward.
You sure?
I'm only sure of myself, of course. I was sunning myself up on deck. Mrs. Barclay was there for part of the time. Then she went to change for lunch. Doctor, this is terrible. I mean, why would anyone wish to see Henry dead?
I think Holmes will be asking you that question, David. After all, next to his wife, you must have known the man better than anyone else.
Yes, I suppose I did.
Well, I think that there's no need for a post-mortem to confirm your theories, Watson. Or to tell us the type of poison that was used to kill Henry Barclay. Here, look at this.
Small phial. It's got a label with words scrawled across it. I can't read it very well.
It says Amacara. It's a South American poison used by the Brazilian Indians. It's quite rare, but very deadly. I found it hidden away at the back of the safe in his cabin. That's what killed him, all right.
But how? I mean, well, I don't understand.
2 or 3 drops of this in the bottom of the glass. The drinks tray was placed as usual on the table in front of the open window porthole that looked out onto the deck. Anyone who was passing outside could have reached in and tipped the poison into the glass.
I see. But then, who could have done it?
Well, anyone who passed along the deck. This file was hidden behind a book labelled Ship's Cash Account. Do you keep the cash account, Staten?
Yes, of course I do.
And no one but you and the dead man could get into the safe?
Well, that's right, but look here. Are you trying to say that it was me? That I poisoned Henry?
I'm not saying anything at the moment. I'm merely asking questions and gathering information. From that information, I shall sift the data, and then I shall be able to make statements. Tell me, are you aware of the contents of this letter?
Well, what is it?
Well, it must have been the last thing your employer ever wrote. It's to his bank back in England, querying certain cash checks. Also in the safe was this balance sheet from the bank, which has the items marked in red ink. 3 checks of £500 each. The letter says that Barclay doesn't remember authorizing those withdrawals or signing those checks.
Let me see that. But I withdrew these cash amounts.
You admit it?
Of course I do. I was asked to make them. Henry asked me to do so. I made the withdrawals and took the cash and gave it to him straight away.
What did he do with the money?
How do I know? He must have had a reason for wanting the cash. I suppose he spent it.
But if that is so, why write the letter? 3 lots of £500. And he can't recall cashing those amounts, so it doesn't make sense.
Look, none of this makes sense. The way things are looking at the moment, it all points to me, doesn't it? The file hidden away, the bank book, the missing money, and I cashed it. But I didn't do these things. You've got to believe me, Mr. Holmes. I didn't do it. What motive could I have had?
I don't know. One final question, Dayton. What are your feelings for Marcel Barclay? Are they strictly platonic or of a somewhat romantic nature?
They are strictly those of a servant and his employer's wife. There is nothing at all between us. And if you think that is a motive for me becoming mixed up in murder, then you're very mistaken. Now, please, may I go now?
David Dayton moved away. I stared at Holmes. I simply could not believe that the young man who was the son of my old friend James Dayton could be a murderer. Holmes gestured to me to follow him, and we both made our way up onto the deck. And there, leaning against the rail, we looked out across the water to the vastness of the Bay of Biscay. Holmes was silent. Eventually, I could bear it no longer. Holmes, this is impossible. Great heavens, I know Dayton's family. They're decent, civilized people, good citizens. There's never been the slightest scandal in their family. I simply can't believe that David is involved in all this.
Oh, he's involved, all right, Watson. That's clear enough.
But you don't think he killed Barclay, do you? I mean, why? What's the motive?
Well, it could be money. We know that £1,500 is suspected of being stolen.
Yes, but David explained all that. He said it was at Barclay's request. He hasn't got the money.
Well, there's no proof of that, Watson. When a man is arrested and stands trial, he has to produce facts.
Holmes, it sounds as though you've already made up your mind that he's guilty.
Oh, certainly not, Watson. Quite the reverse. I'm sure he is innocent.
What? Why? I mean, you've been talking of facts. The facts are all against him. You've made them all fit in.
On the contrary, Watson, there are a few simple facts that do not fit in at all. To start with, for the poison. It's a very rare Brazilian poison, not much known in Europe. Now, according to the log, this yacht last visited Brazilian waters 4 years ago, just after Barclay married Marcel. Dayton was not with them at the time. I don't see how that file could have come into his possession. And another fact is, of course, why was the file hidden in the safe behind the cash book? If Dayton had used the poison, surely he would have thrown the file overboard, broken it, destroyed the evidence.
Yes, well, that is, unless there was more poison in the file, if you wish to use it again.
You saw the file, it was empty. And of course there's the timing. The poison was put into the dead man's glass, and yet, after using it, someone put it back into the safe. But quite impossible. No, Watson. There's been an extremely complicated plot to kill Barclay and place the guilt on Dayton. And that bears investigation.
Holmes, I'm literally and figuratively all at sea. What's it all about? What happens now?
I have a short talk to Madame Barclay, and then we leave for the island. Don't worry, Watson. Your young friend will not hang for a crime he did not commit. Excuse me, I shall be but a few minutes.
There is very little else I can tell you, Monsieur Holmes. I cannot throw any light upon the matter that you have raised. I know no reason for my husband being killed. I know no one would wish to kill him or benefit from his death. I am sorry I cannot help you. Please, will you excuse me now? I am still very upset.
Of course, I understand. Oh, one final question. Your own relationship with David Dayton? You were friendly, that is all?
Like all Englishmen, you think that the French wives are always unfaithful to their husbands. The answer is there is no emotional involvement. David did at one time show some interest in me. I quietly told him that I was in love with my husband, and that was that. I even told Henri about it. We laughed together. That is all. There was no trouble, no intrigue.
Thank you, madame. That will be all.
Shortly after that, Holmes made arrangements to leave the Grey Goose. The body of Henry Barclay had been removed by dinghy to the island, and we were then rowed ashore. There followed a very busy and tedious afternoon and evening. It wasn't until after dusk that Holmes made a sudden announcement.
Andre, Watson, are you prepared to put an end to this case?
But, of course, Holmes. What do you intend doing?
Returning to the Grey Goose under cover of darkness. You have a boat. Will you row us over to the yacht straight away?
Yes, of course. Of course I will.
Come then. We must be very secretive. No noise, not at any time. Dress with black clothing and wear your softest shoes. Quickly and quietly. That is our motto for this evening. Come.
Andre Lorient was just as bemused as I was, but we obeyed all instructions. And with muffled oars, Andre rowed us back across the stretch of water to the yacht. Climbing aboard was not easy, but we managed it without arousing the crew. And then...
Careful, Watson. This way, I think. There are lanterns glowing in the main cabin. Careful. The porthole window is open. Careful, listen.
Yes, you allow Holmes and the police to draw the obvious conclusions.
I will remain silent about what I know, unless you agree to stay with me, now that he is gone.
But you agreed. Our love affair is over. Finished.
No. Oh, don't you see, my darling? This is the most wonderful opportunity. Stay with me. We will marry. You will be the master of this yacht. I will share everything with you. We will be together for always.
No, master. This is all you're doing, wasn't it? All yours.
What? No, of course not. You cannot think that. I would never have killed Henri.
Then I don't understand.
David, you were his secretary. You knew there were financial difficulties, but even you didn't know the extent of his failure and his disappointment. And, of course, he knew about us. That is why he did it.
He did it?
Of course. He knew he'd lost me. He couldn't go on without me and his security. He took his own life. The poison. He hid the file. Questioned the cash that he asked you to collect. Made it look like murder. And the murder you committed. Oh, yes.
But you can prove this?
Oh, yes. And I promise I will speak. But only if you promise to stay with me and marry me. Well, David, what do you say?
Don't say anything, Dayton. We have heard all we need to know. I think you will have to tell the truth without any conditions now. Don't you, madame?
And so, with Andre and myself as witnesses, Marcel Barclay broke down and told the whole story. David Dayton was completely cleared of all suspicions. The police from the mainland were called in, and the truth, but only the truth of the suicide, was explained to them. What happened to Marcel, and whether she would have gone through with it and allowed her lover to hang for her husband's death, is a matter of speculation. But, as Holmes said...
It is impossible to buy love and affection, Watson. Even more impossible to buy loyalty. And thank goodness it has ended as it has. If those two had stayed together, it would have ended in an even greater tragedy. How glad I am that such things do not enter into my life of detection. Well, let us forget the most unsavory case, Watson, and enjoy the rest of the holiday, shall we?
Listen again next Sunday to The Stories of Sherlock Holmes, with Graham Armitage as Holmes and Kerry Jordan as Dr. Watson.
I trust you're enjoying the morning papers, Watson?
Hmm? Oh, yes. Oh, would you like to have them, Holmes?
No, not yet. I'm busy on my correspondence. This is interesting. Listen. Dear Mr. Holmes, I'm most anxious to have your advice on a most important event. I was present at the White and Milton auction of coins yesterday and became involved in what might be a serious charge. May I call upon you tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock? I shall understand if I'm not granted an interview and hope for another appointment. Yours faithfully, Evelyn Summerhays.
Evelyn Summerhays. Name sounds vaguely familiar. Man or woman, Holmes?
And the name's popular with both sexes at the moment. The letter's typewritten, which could mean a woman. The signature is made with a firm flourish, which could be a man's. We shall just have to wait and see, shan't we? Pass the newspaper now, please, Watson.
We present the stories of Sherlock Holmes.
The Auction of an Oxford Crown.
Enjoy the best of both worlds. Only 2 hours drive from Johannesburg and Pretoria and half an hour by air. The magnificent Sundown Ranch Hotel and Lion Park, just 10 kilometers from the Pilanesberg Game Reserve and Sun City Resort. It offers an exciting escape from the hustle and bustle of everyday life. Reasonable rates, excellent food, friendly service and comfortable air-conditioned rooms. It will ensure a memorable stay. Activities include tennis, squash, horse riding, the Lion Park, and much, much more. Call now to make your reservation on 014-573-1000. That's 014-573-1000. Or visit their website at www.destinations.co.za/Sundown Ranch. The Sundown Ranch Hotel and Lion Park. 2 worlds in one.
Flower Connection has just opened their flagship store in Linden, Johannesburg at 65 on 4th, situated in 4th Avenue. For fresh cut flowers, plants and florist accessories at wholesale prices, come to Flower Connection. Our Florist Academy is well known for its courses and flower arranging lessons. Give a unique gift this Mother's Day, a flower course. We supply all flowers and materials. Remember, instead of giving one bouquet, the flower course will be a gift for life. Call Jenny on 076 951 9449 or visit our website at www.flowerconnection.com.
I was very rarely seated at breakfast before Sherlock Holmes came down, but at that time, early in 1882, I'd not been living in lodgings at 221B Baker Street long enough to appreciate Sherlock Holmes' early morning habits. I had therefore helped myself to eggs, bacon, and coffee, and proceeded to read the newspaper. The one Holmes always opened the moment it was brought up by Mrs. Hudson. Holmes soon took it from me. He glanced at the headlines, dismissing all the political and business news, and quickly found a report that interested him.
Did you read this, Watson? A strange coincidence. Listen. Strange event of the Royal Oxford Crown. The well-known sales rooms of White and Milton were placed in confusion yesterday when all hope of bidding for the special coin, the the Charles II Royal Oxford crown were abandoned. The coin, which has been on view for days, disappeared within hours of it coming under the hammer, and another comparatively worthless coin of a similar type was found in its place. The resulting investigation and search proved useless. The coin has disappeared, and the authorities are completely baffled.
But, Holmes, that letter you just opened, it must refer to this event. The auction rooms of White and Mills. This person who's coming to see you has been involved in some way.
Yes, it's most interesting. That could well be our early visitor. I think Mrs. Hudson will answer the bell, Watson. But perhaps you'd welcome her in while I clear some of the breakfast things onto the tray.
Very well, Holmes. I think we shall find that our caller is a young woman. Beautiful and in distress.
Not a romantic, Watson.
This way, madam. Thank you. You have an appointment,
That's all right, Mrs. Hudson. Mr. Holmes is expecting the lady. Please, step this way.
Thank you.
I'm Dr. Watson. I share these rooms with Mr. Holmes. Please, come in.
Thank you. You are Mr. Sherlock Holmes. You got my letter? Ah, yes. I see it upon the table. Thank you for granting me this appointment. My name is Evelyn Summerhays, and I really am in great trouble. I hope I shall not take up too much of your time.
The missing coin, the Royal Oxford crown? I've just been reading about it in the newspaper. Please do be seated, Miss Summerhays. May I offer you some coffee?
Thank you, no. I've had breakfast.
Well, now, tell me how you happen to be concerned in this strange affair.
Well, it's a long story. I will try to be brief. I came to London nearly a year ago from Cumberland. I knew very few people in the city. I managed to get suitable accommodation, but I found I needed to work. I'm not a very patient person. I could not make a success of the task as a governess or teaching children. On the other hand, I'm very well read and speak quite a few languages. I obtained a job working on a newspaper. Oh, yes, I know it's unusual to have women writing for the press, but one must move with the times. My articles and news reports are acceptable under the heading of Evelyn Summerhays, because most readers think that I'm a man. I enjoy my job, Mr. Holmes.
I'm sure you're extremely good at it. And was it as a newspaper woman that you went to the auction rooms?
Yes. I'd heard about the Charles II coin being up for auction. It realized some £250 some years ago. There are only a dozen known to have been struck. It was to commemorate the Oxford Parliament when Charles II ruled without using the house at all. I thought it would make an interesting article. I didn't know much about coin auctions, but I went along. There were only about 8 people present, a handful of elderly gentlemen asking to see the coins, which were in trays taken from drawers. Each coin had its own separate box in the tray. I obtained a catalogue and looked up the Oxford Royal. It was lot number 28. I thought it was a good opportunity to view the coin in detail, and so I called for that particular tray. May I view lot 28, please?
Tray with 28 to the lady at the centre of the table, please.
Thank you. So this is the famous Oxford Royal. Most interesting. Hardly seems any different from the others.
You think it looks like all the rest?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, you read my mind. It does look quite ordinary.
Compare it with others from this trade, for instance. You will find it is quite different. Regardless of the age of the coin, the metal itself shows a different color, and the weight is quite extraordinary. You see?
Yes, of course, you're right.
You are obviously not a collector. Others around this table have no need to even hold the coin to tell you these things.
No, I don't collect coins, although I have seen many coin collections. I haven't taken all that much interest until now. How long do you think it'll be before this lot is auctioned?
An hour, I should say. That is if they start straight away.
Please will the attendants collect all trays on display. Thank you.
Oh, I'm terribly sorry.
That's all right. Here, take the tray, attendant.
Very well, madam. We will commence with lot 1. If you consult your catalogues, you will note the history of these coins, which make up the Downsbury collection. They were originally...
I sat fascinated as the auction proceeded. Everyone round the arc of the maiden table seemed to know exactly what would happen. It moved very swiftly. The young man sitting next to me bid for a lot and made the purchase with hardly a glance at the coin when it was placed in an envelope and handed to him. Shortly after that, lot 28, the Oxford Royal, came up. I was interested to find out how much it would bring. After that, I would leave and go back to my apartment, write the article.
Lot 28, the Oxford Royal coin, minted in the time of Charles II.
The year of 1681. I am sure.
Excuse me, but that is not the Oxford Royal. Maybe in the right box, but it's the wrong coin. I can see it from here. That is not the Oxford Royal Crown. It is not.
Quiet, please. Quiet. Allow me to examine the lot, please. The gentleman is quite correct. There has been some mistake. This is the wrong coin. I'm sorry, but I must discontinue the selling. This is an important lot. Did anyone in this room ask to see the royal crown before the bidding began?
Yes. The lady did. She was the last to handle it before you began, sir.
Madam, did you see the tray before the auction started?
Yes, I examined it and returned it to the box. I know it was the correct one. I made notes about it. Even a rough sketch of the face design.
Well, this is a most awkward situation, Miss...
Summerhays. Evelyn Summerhays.
Well, Miss Summerhays, I hardly know what to say. Everyone here is known to me by sight, if not by name. We have, of course, the name and address of everyone. But yourself?
I live at number 17, Hearthstone Mansions, Trevor Square, Knightsbridge.
Thank you. I have no intention of embarrassing you, but is there anyone to whom we can refer who knows you personally? You must understand that this is no reflection upon yourself. It simply places you on the same terms as the gentleman.
If you care to refer to the editor of the Evening Star newspaper, he will give you any references you may need. I don't see that I can help more than that. If you have any ladies on the staff, I'll be agreeable to a personal search of my clothing and handbag. I presume that the gentleman will also raise no objections to submitting to similar treatment.
Order, please! Order! Now, please, this must be conducted in a decorous manner. I am afraid I shall have to get in touch with our solicitors and perhaps inform the police. Meanwhile, will you all please remain...
There was no confusion. It was all too orderly and civilized for that. Nevertheless, I remained until the end. I was the last to go, having made a written statement. The orderly who showed me out reassured me by saying muddles like this had occurred before, but I'm still very much under suspicion as a thief. Can you advise me, Mr. Holmes? This could jeopardize my whole future.
First, a few questions. The young man sitting next to you, did he speak to you again that morning?
Yes, he hung about after the others had gone and wished me well. He hoped I wouldn't be detained.
I see. Now, when he suggested, before the bidding began, that you compared the Oxford Royal with a coin from another tray, was there at any time a slight confusion? Did you, for instance, drop any of the coins?
Well, why, yes. Yes, I think I did. Yes, I was a little embarrassed by the young man's attention, and I dropped the coins in the box. But I picked them up and placed them back immediately, of course.
But could you, quite inadvertently, have returned the coins to the wrong boxes? Transposed them, for instance? Now, think carefully, Miss Summerhays. Is such a thing possible?
Why, yes. I was confused. I could have done so, I suppose. Yes, that is quite possible. Mr. Holmes, is that the answer?
No, I don't think it is the answer at all. But I do think it could be the beginning. Would you like me to investigate the matter from now on, Miss Summerhays?
The following classic Springbok Radio commercial comes to you with the courtesy of the Springbok Radio Preservation Society of South Africa.
New Pepsodent has Earlium, an amazing discovery that actually polishes teeth so sparkling clean and white, dulling film can't find a hole. Feel the difference with your tongue.
You wonder where the dullness went when you polish your teeth with Pepsodent.
New Pepsodent, the white toothpaste you can feel working.
Pepsodent.
Looking for space to hang and dry your washing?
Washline distributors have the solution. Their rotating and fold-down wash lines take up the smallest spaces. Ideal for townhouses, simplexes and balconies at affordable prices. Galvanized or powder-coated and available in 5 different colours. For 24-hour delivery, installation, reliable and friendly service, phone Washline distributors on 011 792 2486. That's 011 792 2486. Wash lines for every space and need.
Miss Summerhayes' reaction to Holmes' suggestion was one of great pleasure. She protested that she had merely come to him for advice, that this was a case far too minor for his attention, and that she'd be unable to pay for his services. All these doubts Holmes brushed aside with a wave of his hand. He was intrigued, like a student being set a mathematical problem. He was determined to find the correct answer, and as quickly as possible. I half suspected that already he was way ahead of us and had formed a possible theory. Even Summerhayes was caught up by his quiet enthusiasm.
Well, it's most generous of you, Mr. Holmes. Naturally, I wish to clear myself of all suspicions and get to the bottom of the whole matter.
Good. Then let me continue with my questioning. There was a search of sorts, I imagine. I mean, the trays must have been examined, the areas around the table, the floors, etc.
Oh, yes. The auctioneer, a gentleman named Dukes, was very thorough. A few officials arrived and asked interminable questions.
This must have meant that everyone left the seats they were occupying. Yes, tell me, Miss Summerhayes, did you return to the same chair once the search had been concluded?
Well, yes. But at least I think it was the same chair.
Ah. Now tell me, and think carefully, can you recall anything happening at that particular time? Anything? However small and unimportant it may seem. Any little detail?
I don't think so. Oh, just a moment. There was one small detail. I went back and sat in what I thought was the same chair, and then the young man who was talking to me earlier, he came along the same row, and he spoke to me again.
Excuse me, but you are occupying my seat, I think.
Oh, well, there are plenty of vacant chairs. The row is almost empty. There was nothing on the seat to say it was yours. No coat, pass.
No, but, well, I like to sit in the same place, you see.
Oh, please take your places. I must ask no one to leave until they have given permission. It has been decided to cancel the rest of this morning's selling. Miss Summerhayes, I wonder if you would be good enough to stay for a short while after the others have left.
Then that was that.
So, the young man didn't reclaim his seat. Splendid. Yes, it's all beginning to make sense. Fitting in like a neat jigsaw puzzle.
I must confess that I cannot see it myself.
Well, no matter. The whole point is that if you didn't remove the coin, then someone else did. And the only person who could have done so was the young gentleman next to you. Now, 2 questions. Do you know the man's name? And do you know the number of the lot you say he purchased earlier in the auction?
The answer to both those questions is no. His name was never mentioned. Although I think I heard one of the men call him Oldbury, something like that. And while I know he did make a purchase, I can't remember the lot number.
It doesn't matter. Those facts can be obtained without much trouble. Tell me, when you were asked to stay on after the others had left, did this young man speak to you again? I think you mentioned something about him wishing you good luck.
That's right. He came over and he said that he hoped I wouldn't be further embarrassed by any detention.
Forgive the question, but did he appear rather intimate? Did he touch you at all?
No. But he did come rather near. He actually leaned against the back of the chair. I remember pulling away a little. I was a little embarrassed. But he removed his hands at once, smiled, gave a little bow, and left the rooms. He really was very charming. Good-looking and well-spoken. I can't believe that he had anything to do with the missing coin.
I think that there you were quite wrong. Right, Miss Summerhayes, I think that's as far as we can go on the case at the moment. Watson, I wonder if you're going in the direction of White and Mills this morning. They're in Wigmore Street. The owner of the rooms is Clinton White. If he and Dukes, the auctioneer, can grant me an interview, say, at 3:30 this afternoon, I shall be very much obliged.
Yeah, I can go that way in my rounds, Holmes, yes.
Good. Certainly. Oh, that's all, I think, except for one question, Miss Summerhayes.
What is it, Mr. Holmes?
Why are you doing all this?
I beg your pardon?
You are the daughter of Milton Summerhayes, are you not? You mentioned earlier that you came to London from Cumberland. That is where the Summerhayes live. They've had lands there since the time of William the Conqueror. I can easily look up the history in Who's Who and Debrett. You are related to that family, are you not?
Yes. Lord Summerhayes is my uncle.
He is also a very well-known collector, stamps and coins. So what are you doing working for a London newspaper, eking out a living and staying in Knightsbridge? Why, Miss Summerhayes?
It must seem very strange to you, Mr. Holmes, but as a famous detective, I have no need to point out to you the details of my personal appearance. I am 25, Mr. Holmes. I'm not exactly a beauty, am I? I've always had an unfortunate face, and my figure is large and ungainly.
Oh, no.
Yes? There is no need to be polite. I am an ugly woman. I am also quite a rich one. I've had many men try to become attached to me, and in every single case it has been for my money. I made up my mind that I would not be used in this fashion. I would not let my life slip by. And so I came to London to try to prove to myself that I am a person of some worth and intelligence who can be independent and worthwhile. I'm sorry. I'm afraid you have made me speak too freely about myself.
I apologize, Miss Summerhayes. Please don't be upset. I'm sure you will be successful in working out your personal problems. You are a woman of great courage and determination. You will not fail. You are greatly to be admired.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes. May I go now, please? Of course, I shall be available at my home address or the offices of the Evening Star if you should need me.
I don't think I shall trouble you again. But rest assured, this whole matter will be cleared up quite soon, and there will be no more trouble. I promise you that. Good morning to you, Miss Summerhayes.
After Miss Summerhayes left, Holmes hurriedly scribbled a short note to the owner of the salesrooms in Wigmore Street, Clifton White, and I left for my rounds. I was able to deliver the note quite early, and although I missed Holmes at lunchtime, I was determined not to be left out of things. And so, at 3:30 that afternoon, I made my way back to White & Mill's salesrooms. Holmes was already there.
Watson, I had an idea that you would wish to join us. Let me introduce you. Clinton White, Dr. John Watson.
We made ourselves known earlier in the day. Glad you could come back, Watson. This is a most delicate affair. Things have often gone wrong in this business, but we've always managed to hush things up. I hope there'll be no trouble this time, no publicity. I mean, the lady from the newspaper.
There will be no trouble, I assure you. Now, Watson, to give you a clearer idea of our position. We know that the gentleman who sat next to Miss Summerhayes and engaged her in conversation quite a few times was a Mr. Derek Olmsted, who lives in Portman Close. It's very near here, and I've sent a message round to him. I expect him at 4 o'clock. That gives us half an hour to finalize things. Mr. White, would you be good enough to show us to the room used yesterday for the auction?
Of course, this way. It is locked, of course. Will be until next Saturday. Through here. The place has been cleared and cleaned, as you can see. All the chairs have been placed to one side.
Yes, in neat rows. Let me see. Yes, I think there will be no trouble at all. I imagine that while you do not wish for publicity, the fact that the public is now made aware of the Oxford Royal Crown, interest in the coin will boost its value. You will get a better price?
Fortunately, yes. That would be the case if we can regain the wretched thing.
Oh, no difficulty in that. Here you are. Here it is.
Mr. Holmes, this can't be... But it is. It is the Charles II Oxford Royal. But this is miraculous.
Oh, not at all. It was neatly hidden beneath the seat of that chair. They're all identical, of course, but there's a mark on the back of one, a number 28, scratched on the top of the wooden frame. There, so you have the precious coin. And now, all we have to do is wait until it's proved who took it. Shall we adjourn to the next room for half an hour?
Already, I was beginning to put the pieces together. It only remained for Holmes to catch the culprit. We left the door to the auction rooms ajar and concealed ourselves in the alcove leading to the passage as 4 o'clock approached.
There you see the door is opening slowly. Someone is entering the room. Stay exactly where you are and don't move, please.
Who are you? What are you doing here?
My name is Sherlock Holmes. I have no need to ask your name or what you are doing here. You came to collect the missing Oxford Royal, didn't you? Will you please produce the coin you have just placed in your breast pocket?
I don't know what you're talking about. I came here to see Mr. White. I left some gloves here, and...
It's no use, Olmsted. Holmes has explained exactly how you bought a quite ordinary lot at the auction yesterday, knowing it was the Royal Crown. Kindly produce that coin.
Oh, very well. Here you are. But I bought it legally. I took only what you sold to me. I didn't switch the coins.
No, you simply noticed that Miss Summerhayes did, and so you took advantage of the fact. When people were searched, you had to conceal the coin, so you slipped it into the crack beneath your chair seat. Later, you tried to get it back. But you couldn't. The lady was occupying the place. So you had to mark the seat to identify it and come back later to collect it. Well, it's now your decision, White. Do you prosecute this man or not?
Well, I don't know. Here, please take the coin. Take it back. You'll make far more money on it now than you would have done yesterday. Please, think of the publicity. I shall be a ruined man. Please take the coin.
No, you can keep it, Olmsted. You didn't think we'd take a chance like that, having found the real one, do you? This is simply 2 pennies stuck together. Keep it as a reminder that honesty is always the best policy.
The following classic Springbok Radio commercial comes to you with the courtesy of the Springbok Radio Preservation Society of South Africa.
Rosa, the gay red wine, Villa Bianca, the sprightly white.
Villa Rosa, Villa Bianca.
Lively, exciting, the perfect complement to the perfect meal. The wines of good living.
Some things in life are obvious and easy. If you have a business providing a good service or selling a product, you need to let people know. But how do you do that? Easy. Just tell them here on springbokradio.com. Internet radio is about talking to people in their own homes. Your message becomes part of the sound they've chosen to listen to. To find out more about advertising on springbokradio.com, contact Dave Dupree on Johannesburg 011 678 5176. Or for outside South Africa, 2711 678 5176. Or email Dave at springbokradio.com.
We were able to reassure Evelyn Summerhayes that all was well. The coin had been recovered and was later sold at a highly improved price. We heard no more of Derek Olmsted. There was talk that he'd gone abroad, as Holmes said.
He was an amateur criminal, really. I mean, what use was the coin to him? It's not like stealing a string of jewels, which can be broken up and reset and become marketable. A coin remains a coin. If he tried to sell it to a dealer, the whole crime would be exposed. No. A foolish, greedy young man. And Evelyn Summerhayes was right. It was hardly worth my notice. But it helped everyone concerned. And after all, it was all over in one short day, wasn't it? Oh, well, join me in a drink, Watson, and let's toast our next case of real crime. It's about time I crossed swords with a gentleman known as Moriarty.
Listen again next Sunday to The Stories of Sherlock Holmes, with Graham Armitage as Holmes and Kerry Jordan as Dr. Watson.
We present The Stories of Sherlock Holmes.
It was at the beginning of 1886 that I opened my surgery in Maida Vale and Paddington. The rooms were quite small but well equipped, and my practice began to flourish from the very first day. The place suited me admirably, for I was still living at 221B Baker Street, a brief half an hour's walk away, and I found the daily exercise most beneficial. I'd only been working there a matter of a month when, on a blustery January morning, the outer door burst open and a young, poorly dressed stranger staggered in. He collapsed, and before I had a chance to examine him, he died in my arms. There was nothing I could do but send for the police, and, as I thought I caught his name, for Sherlock Holmes. Holmes arrived by hansom cab immediately.
He's dead all right, Watson. And from that wound in his side.
A knife wound. An attempt at an upward thrust between the ribs straight to the heart. But it was deflected, still fatal. You see, I've merely removed his cape and jacket. He's lost a considerable amount of blood.
You don't know this man? He's not a patient of yours?
No, I've never seen him before in my life.
And yet you say that he mentioned my name. Well, the inference would be that he knew who you were and of our association. Otherwise, why gasp out the message? Can you remember the exact words?
Well, it's a bit difficult to say for sure. He was dying, poor fellow, but as far as I could make out, he said, "Tell Holmes that there is snow at Brendan Woods." It doesn't make much sense to me. I know we've had a severe winter and there's been a lot of snow, but why mention Brendan Woods?
You're sure that he said nothing else?
No, that's all. He just repeated the phrase and then he died. I got hold of a couple of the boys outside near the canal and paid them to go first for you and then to the police station.
Well, I'm very glad I got here first. Usually I'm only called in once the police have carried out their examination and ruined all the clues. Well, before they arrive, I should like the opportunity to study the dead man. You said that you have touched nothing.
No, nothing at all. I've just examined the wound, staunched the bleeding. Otherwise, the body lies where it fell.
Ah, good. Now, to start with a thorough examination of the clothing. The police report on the body itself will be accurate enough. That can come later. Very well, Watson, I shall start with the shoes and work upwards.
Holmes had about 15 minutes before the police arrived, and in that 15 minutes he went over the body of the dead man, examining every part of his clothing. He scraped earth away from under his boots. He took threads from the cape that lay beneath the shoulders, studied the contents of the pockets, making a careful note of each detail in his notebook. Eventually, he was satisfied and was able to stand back with some satisfaction when Inspector Gregson of Scotland Yard took charge.
You've concluded your examination, Holmes?
Yes, as much as I could without moving the body.
The man is unknown to you?
Completely.
All right, men.
That's it.
Nothing in his pockets that gives any identification?
Not a thing. There's a wallet, but it contains only sovereigns.
That's right.
A few florins and loose change. Cheap handkerchief, penknife, bunch of keys. That's curious.
Nothing else?
No, that's why it's so curious. It's as though the man was determined to remain anonymous. There are not even name tags on his clothing. Even the maker's name inside the collar of his cloak and jacket has been removed. Now, that is most unusual. I think we shall have a job finding out who this man is, Gregson.
We'll do our best.
Might I make a suggestion?
What is it?
Try the French police, the Sûreté.
Why do you say that, Holmes?
Well, while his clothing has no maker's tag, the cut of the jacket is unmistakably French. The boots and trousers are not. They could be purchased anywhere, but there is a look of a Frenchman about the fellow. It's worth sending a description of him to Paris.
Very well, I'll remember that. Thank you, Holmes. Is there anything else?
I don't think so. I'd like to hear the result of the post-mortem and, of course, any other items of news that may spring from this man's murder.
Quite. We shall keep you informed. All right, men. We can go.
By the way, Gregson, have you made any progress on the Isle of Dogs smuggling case?
Mr. Lestrade is the matter in hand. He hasn't reported anything lately. I think he's up against a brick wall, if you ask me. No progress for some months.
Well, I'd like news on that also, if it's not too much trouble. Tell Lestrade I'll be calling upon him shortly.
Very well. Come on, you men. Get him into the police van. Good day to you, Holmes. Dr. Watson.
Good day.
Well, Holmes, it was a fine way to start the day. What on earth does it all mean?
I've no idea at the moment, Watson. There's insufficient data to formulate any theories, but I think we must not waste time. Are you able to leave these rooms for the next hour?
I have an appointment at noon. As long as I'm back here by then, yes, I can spare time. Why, Holmes? What are we going to do?
Find out where this man came from. Shouldn't be all that hard. He's been bleeding profusely. Although hunched up with a hand over his wound, he must have left a trail that can be followed. And the police have now driven away. We can continue in an uninterrupted fashion. Get your coat on, Watson. Bring a couple of stout sticks. Let's hope we shan't have to use them, but one never knows. Come. There's no time to lose. It's seldom that we have a fresh path to follow. Let's take advantage of it. Hurry now, Watson. Hurry.
I did as Holmes instructed. Within 5 minutes, my rooms were locked, and we were out in the street. Once again, I watched and admired Holmes at work. No one would ever have guessed that we were not simply taking a morning stroll. He seemed not to be looking at anything, although his eyes were everywhere. Sometimes he would pause, and with a nonchalant gesture of his stick indicate a spot of blood on the paving stone or a smear against a wall. We walked down Warwick Avenue and across Howley Place Bridge over Regent's Canal. There, Holmes stopped, and with a slight nod of his head, indicated some stone steps that led down to the water. At the bottom of the steps, a gravel path showed clear footprints.
There. See, Watson, it's here that the attack took place. Note the marks. And here against the upright of the bridge. Blood. Yes, here is where our friend was ambushed and attacked. I should say by 2 men. 2 men who had lain in wait for him. Yes, they must have known he'd be coming here along. So they concealed themselves in an alcove of the cement bridge. And they waited for at least 20 minutes before pouncing upon him.
How do you know that, Holmes?
Cigarettes. Look at the stubs and the matchsticks. Yes, at least 20 minutes. Maybe more. The natural impulse of a smoker would be to throw the ends of the cigarettes into the water. Yes, one of them could well have been a seafaring man. Look, that's the spit marks of the man who chews tobacco. And seaman's shag at that. So we know he was attacked by 2 men. Now, the next question is, where was our friend coming from? Yes, I think that's fairly easy.
You do?
Oh, yes. The boots and the bottoms of his trousers were not only damp, but they also smelt rather strongly. Look, there's the opening of the drain into the sewers beneath the canal. The grid work is still resting ajar. Yes, it's all beginning to fit.
Where does that drain lead, Holmes?
We shall find out when we go through it, Watson. But, come nearer. Let us bend down as though examining the earth by the water. Right. That's it. Now I'm going to take my magnifying glass out and appear to be looking at the blades of grass. But watch.
A small handbill, Holmes. Why?
Don't ask questions. Just crouch there and wait. Yes, don't turn around. Don't move, Watson. We're being watched. There, from the top of the bridge. There are 2 men noting our every move. Yes, I can see them quite clearly in the mirror. They could be the 2 men responsible for all this.
What do we do, Holmes?
We wait for a while, and then we shall give them the slip. But for the moment, let us pretend we're completely unaware of them. They're just as interested in us as we are in them. You know, this has all the elements of a most unusual case.
What do you think they're up to, then? Well, what's it look like? We're trying to work out what happened. They must have followed the trail there. We should have finished him off proper and dumped the body in the water. The governor will say you made a right mess of this, Soapy.
Me? Why me? I did what you told me to. If you hadn't got in that fight with him...
We was told to stop him, weren't we? Plenty of ways of doing that without schooling him. And not doing a clean kill, either.
I thought I'd done him in. Wasn't till we came back along here and I saw there was no body that I knew I'd missed. It can't be helped.
I'll tell that to the governor. Anyway, them 2 is on to it.
What are they? Plainclothes men? Detectives?
Must be.
What we do?
Keep out of sight, then follow them. Look, there they are. They're straightening up. Walking along the canal path. Come on, let's follow.
Now, don't look round. Don't worry about being followed, Watson. We should get rid of them quite easily before calling upon Mr. Woods.
Calling upon Mr. Woods? Well, I don't know what you're talking about, Holmes.
Watson, we'll continue to take things at their face value, won't you? The dying man's message. Snow at Brendan Woods. Brendan Woods is not a place, Watson. It's a person. It's a man's name.
Oh, I see. Never thought of that, but... Snow.
Snow is the underworld's name for the white powder, Watson. Dope. Drugs. Brendan Woods has something to do with dope smuggling. That's why I asked Gregson about the Isle of Dogs case. Come on. Let's get rid of these tiresome followers, shall we?
I was never able to keep up with Sherlock Holmes' powers of observation and deduction.
His reasoning was always logical and usually correct, but at times I found it bewildering. However, I had learned not to query his decisions, and so on that blustery January morning, I followed him swiftly down the paths of the Regent's Canal, through a labyrinth of highways and byways, until he had shaken off our 2 followers. Before I knew it, we were back at the same spot under the Howley Place Bridge.
I think we've got rid of those 2 tiresome gentlemen, Watson, so shall we take up the trail again? In through that grating over the drain, I think. Come on. Now, this will not be pleasant, but we shall have to endure it.
Yes, a handkerchief over the nose and mouth might help.
Yes, I agree.
Ooh, I'd have put eau de cologne on if I'd known we to endure this.
It shouldn't last very long. I have an idea where we shall come out. Can you see, Watson?
Not very well, but maybe not.
There's a light ahead. Look. You realise, Watson, that we're very near Paddington Station, and next to Paddington Station goods yard is a lot of waste ground.
Well, is that where they come out, Holmes?
Yes, I think so, but here, follow me. I think let's step up here. Now, careful, careful. That's it. Now, this paving stone above has been moved. Yes, recently, so it should lift up and slide over. I think I can manage it. Just stand back, Watson. That's it. Come on, it's quite easy. Just pull yourself up. Come on, Watson. Give you a hand. Just as I thought. Yes, the courtyard. Look at that sign, Watson.
Brendan Woods, Dragon Boatman. Well, you're right as usual, Holmes. It is a man, and he must live here.
Yes. In this house in the yard, yes. Come along, let's see who's in charge here.
Very rough sort of neighborhood, Holmes. You say, very near the station.
What do you want? How did you get in here? You should have come to the front. Mr. Woods doesn't like strangers in his yard.
We are the police. You must let us in. We need to talk to Mr. Woods straight away.
Police? Well, I'm Mrs. Paddy. I'm just the housekeeper. I don't know nothing about what goes on in these parts. I ain't done nothing.
Take us to Mr. Woods, and I shall be more inclined to believe you.
Well, all right, then. Come on in, then. Mr. Woods, he doesn't normally see no one. He's bedridden, you see. Has been for some years. He never leaves the house. And I don't rightly like to disturb him so early.
Early? It's nearly lunchtime.
Well, I never go into him until after 12 o'clock. Sleeps a lot, he does. Here are. There's 2 gentlemen to see you, Mr. Woods. I think... Oh, my God.
I shall never forget my first impressions of that room. It was large, but so cluttered with bric-a-brac that it looked like a junk shop. Facing us against one wall was a heavy brass and iron bed. Under the patchwork counterpane lay a frail old man. His head was partly covered with a white nightcap. His frail, bloodless hands clutched at the grimy sheet about his neck. One glance was enough. The man was desperately ill.
Mr. Woods! Mr. Woods!
Holmes, this man's ill. He's hardly conscious. Please, let me see to him.
Now, what's the matter? He was all right yesterday.
Yes, he's had a stroke. He's conscious, but can't speak. See, his hands are twitching. Holmes, we must get this man into hospital.
Yes, but what's this? A piece of paper by his hand. Finds what they would wish to keep. Golden orbs in reach of sleep. Golden orbs in reach of sleep.
Now, please, Holmes, this is not time to ponder over that doggerel. This man's desperately ill. We must help him, and at once. Holmes went into action. He immediately handed the housekeeper a sovereign and gave her clear instructions. A carriage ambulance was sent for, and the old man was removed. Holmes went over the room in great detail, and then took a hansom straight to Scotland Yard. He was lucky to find Gregson in his office.
The dead man was French, all right, Holmes. Name André Bresson. He was working on what the French call l'affaire Passavant. A smuggling gang who used the Thames as a way of passing dope to ships bound for America.
Just as I thought. Any more details?
The French think that he was onto the London top man. His identity is unknown. He works under the name of the Governor. Bresson's latest report led the Sûreté to believe that he was about to break the whole line. He should have had information about every port, every dumping ground for drugs from Marseille to Liverpool. But we can't find that information.
I think we may be able to, even yet, Gregson. Now, listen to what I have to say. It's vitally important. The man we are after, whom they call the Governor, can be caught. I think I know how he will react. His men are the ones who were watching Watson and myself earlier today. We can trick them, I'm sure.
You were tricked. You made a mess of the whole thing. Attempted to kill Bresson and aroused suspicions. Allowed him to crawl away. How do you know that he hasn't told the police everything he knows?
We did our best. We was just unlucky, that's all. Well, Soapy's right. What could we do once those two turned up? I mean, the tall fellow in the cape and the hat and the other fatter one.
You don't even know who they are, do you? You don'ts. That man is Sherlock Holmes, and his companion is Dr. Watson. Holmes happens to be the best private detective in Europe. And you have put him on my trail. Now go on, get out. Get out. I'll handle this myself from now on. It's clear that Bresson had an accomplice in the Regent Canal. The rag and bone merchant, Brendan Woods. It's time someone interrogated him.
Well, if you'd like us to call round...
No. You never any more. You are dismissed. Now clear out.
Yeah, look here. What about our payment? You promised...
All I promise you is a nasty death unless you get out of my sight this instant and stay out. Go on, get out. I told you. I'll manage myself from now on. I must put a stop to this straight away, before Mr. Sherlock Holmes gets too well informed. Yes, I must move on it straight away.
Yes, what is it?
I have an appointment to see Mr. Brendan Woods. Can you kindly take me to him, please?
An appointment, have you? Oh, well, I suppose it's all right. Very well, then. Coming. Follow me. There we go. He's through here. He's been very ill, he has. You better not stay too long. He can't get out of bed. He can hardly talk. In here. Remember now, don't stay too long.
You are Brendan Woods.
Oh, what do you want with me? Who are you?
Never mind who I am. I'm here because I have good reason to believe that you have been conspiring against me. What do you know of the man André Bresson?
I've never heard of him.
Don't lie to me. He was here several times. He called upon you and enlisted your help, didn't he? He gave you information and used your rag and boneyard as a ground to conceal things.
I don't know what you mean.
Yes, you do. You know all right. It was very clever using this place. An ideal spot to spy on all the transactions that we've arranged with the goods yard in the river. What do you know about La Fieuve Passavant?
I don't know what you mean. I'm an old man. I'm ill. You got no right to come in here like this.
Shut your mouth, you old fool. You must know all about Bresson. He was a spy from the French police, and he must have left certain information here. Information and a sample of the goods we trade in.
What do you want?
I want those goods and anything that Bresson may have written about our organization. Don't say that you are ignorant, because I know you are not. We've had our eyes on you for some time. Because you were weak and old, we thought you were harmless. But now I can see that you're a scheming, evil old devil who is behind some of our failures. Well, there's always one way of taking care of that. See, this knife?
No, I can't tell you anything when I'm dead.
Then if you value your life, speak now.
Take this. It's all I can tell you.
Find what you would wish to keep. Golden orbs in reach of sleep. Golden orbs in reach of sleep. What the... yes. Golden orbs. The brass knobs of the bedstead. They're within easy reach of the bedridden man, half asleep. The brass knobs on the top of the iron bedposts. Clever. Well, we shall soon see.
It's no good. What? Stay exactly where you are, hands on the bed rail. This gun is at your head, and I promise you one move and I'll blow your brains out. All right, come in, Gregson, Watson. Right, this is the man. Take him away. Congratulate me, Gregson. The rag and bone man has just caught the governor.
Gregson, of course, was delighted at this sudden and dramatic turn of events. The place suddenly seemed to be swarming with policemen. The governor was taken away, and over a nice hot cup of tea served by Mrs. Paddy, the housekeeper, Holmes explained how he'd dressed as the old man and taken his place.
Gregson was right, of course. Brasson did have information, and he was using the rag and bone man as a cover point. Yes, I saw at once the meaning of Wood's message. The golden orb was indeed the brass bet knob. I extracted all the contents, a pouch filled with opium and heroin, and also Brasson's notes regarding the people and places he knew were dispersal points in the drug-running business, operating from Regent's Canal to the Isle of Dogs. A very youthful case, Watson. Well, thanks, Miss Paddy, whom I took into my confidence, the matter has been successfully concluded. One can only hope that Brenda and Woods, the rag and bone man, makes a good recovery. Well, shall we go home now, Watson, or would you like another cup of tea?
Listen again next Sunday to The Stories of Sherlock Holmes, with Graham Armitage as Holmes and Kerry Jordan as Dr. Watson.
By Jove, that's a really handsome painting, Holmes.
Yes, brushwork is very fine. Painted by, Oliver Wynne.
Yes. But I must admit, I think the model's very beautiful, Holmes. A most pleasing form, a woman of great fascination.
Indeed.
You're admiring the painting.
Good. Yes, we think it's very fine, but surely you're...
You are Sherlock Holmes, are you not?
Yes, that is correct.
Mr. Holmes, I'm Esther Wynne. I posed for that painting. I think my husband is a very great artist. But Mr. Holmes, I'm in great trouble. Please, may I call upon you and ask your advice? I think it may be a matter of life or death.
We present The Stories of Sherlock Holmes.
The Model Wife.
Holmes and I had found ourselves in the Wigmore Art Gallery more or less by accident. We'd been to book seats for a violin recital and had wandered back to the foyer through the gallery. I was quite used to Holmes being recognized in public, but I was aware that this meeting and the lady's request were most unusual. Naturally, Holmes agreed to help, and an appointment was made for early the next day. In fact, we had scarcely finished breakfast when Mrs. Hudson showed in Esther Wynne. I had been impressed by her beauty in the painting, but in real life, Mrs. Wynne was far more impressive. It wasn't just the face and figure or the grace with which she moved and the low, husky voice. It was an inner glow that shone through her clear blue eyes, a quiet, controlled animation that gave her personality a compelling sincerity. It was clear that she was, that morning, greatly troubled.
Do sit down, Mrs. Wynne. A cup of coffee with sugar will help to put you at your ease. Watson, would you mind?
No, of course not, by all means.
Now, madam, pray remove your coat and gloves. For although it is still early in the day, it is quite cold. You will not feel the benefit of outer clothing when you leave, unless you do so.
Thank you.
Now, tell me what it is that disturbs you so much.
Well, it's so hard to put into words. Now that I'm here, I don't know how to begin.
Everything you say will be treated with the strictest of confidence, I do assure you. We're used to hearing all manner of secrets within these four walls.
Yes, I know, but well,
It is about your husband, is it not? Your marriage is not the success that you would wish it to be.
How did you guess that?
It's not really a guess. You come here in a state of distress, and I notice that you sit there twisting and twisting your wedding ring around your finger. These latest theories of Sigmund Freud are profoundly revealing. Subconsciously, you are showing concern about the bond between yourself and your husband. Have the disagreements between you now turned to active violence?
You seem to read my mind, Mr. Holmes.
No. I notice the bruises upon your wrists, which even the lace sleeves cannot hide. You have been struggling with someone far stronger than you are. Am I right? Do my deductions help you to say what is on your mind?
Yes. Yes, they do. You are correct in your assumptions. When I married Oliver, I was extremely happy. He was gaining recognition as a painter. The future looked promising. Somehow, the fame he hoped for didn't materialize. Oh, we were able to buy our house down at Great Rylands. We were financially well off. But Oliver just didn't climb to the heights that he aspired to. He has become a fashionable portrait painter, but not a great artist.
And his disappointment, his frustration began to affect his behavior? He appeared to turn against you?
Yes. And then he started to become jealous of me. Everything I did was suspect. Everyone I looked at was my friend, not his. If a gentleman danced with me, he thought I was being unfaithful to him. Naturally, I protested. This led to quarrels, and of late it has become worse. Things came to a head about 6 weeks ago when a distant cousin of mine, Matthew Haldane, a young, presentable gentleman, moved into Little Rylands. Of course, I made him welcome to the house. But Oliver couldn't understand. He found us talking on the veranda one evening, and after Matthew left, Oliver seemed to lose his reason. He attacked me viciously.
You're at it again, aren't you? And this time you've the nerve to bring your latest man into our house.
Oliver, please, this is nonsense. You're imagining things. It's not like that at all.
Imagining things. Imagining that I saw you break away from each other when I came out here on the veranda. Imagining those guilty looks that passed between you.
There were no guilty looks. Matthew was simply embarrassed by your aggressive attitude. Oliver, please, how can you think these things? Matthew is a relative, a cousin.
Relative, so you say. But have I any proof of that? And even if he is, I don't think that would stop you from flirting with him. You can't keep your hands off him, can you?
Please,
now
please.
listen to me. You are my wife. And if you don't stop this carrying on with other men, I'll kill you. You understand? I'll kill you.
That was just the start of it. The start of the violence. Mr. Holmes, I cannot go on like this. My husband has turned into a vicious brute. He seizes every opportunity to humiliate me, to strike me. And I know his madness is growing. He is planning to kill me. I know he is. And I can do nothing. I have no money of my own, no friends, no relatives I can turn to. What am I to do? Who will help me?
Mrs. Wynne, you are indeed in a most unhappy position. I think I am quite unable to advise you. You can seek protection from the law only if it can be proved you are in danger. But I cannot see that I can be of any help to you. Look, a family friend, someone who's sympathetic, may be able to intercede. Some near friend of your husband's, whom he respects.
There is no such person, Mr. Holmes. Dr. Watson, I fear that things will come to a head very shortly. You are the only two I have told this to. You and Matthew, who naturally questioned me. Matthew has plans. He wants me to leave Oliver. Simply pack my things and leave him. Matthew has a little money and a country cottage in Cumberland that no one knows about. He says I can go there, stay as long as I wish.
Run away? Will that solve it all? What steps will your husband take to get you back? If he is as unstable as you say, I think he will run amok.
Well, I can't help that. Look, will you come down to Great Rylands? I cannot ask you to the house for obvious reasons. But there is a most comfortable inn called the Anvil. If you could stay for a night or so, I could introduce you to Matthew, and perhaps if there is an opportunity you could meet my husband. You can judge for yourself if I really am in danger. I know it seems as though I'm clutching at straws, but please, this is the one way you can help me. Please?
Both Holmes and I had been working rather hard. And so, after a deal of discussion, we agreed upon a weekend in the country. And that Friday evening saw us safely installed at the Anvil at Great Rylands. Holmes had always maintained that the best place to meet people in the country was the bar of the pub. He was right. for we'd scarcely ordered our drinks when...
Excuse me. Are you Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson?
That is correct. We've just arrived here. You, I take it, are Matthew Haldane, Mrs. Wynn's cousin?
Yes, that's right. How did you guess?
No one on these parts knows that we're visiting. Except Esther Wynn. She said she would try to arrange a meeting with you.
I see. She really is in great trouble, Mr. Holmes. Her husband, Oliver, is really going out of his mind. We must find a way of solving all this without anyone being hurt.
Have you any suggestions?
Well, I think you will agree when you know all the facts and see just how Oliver is behaving. But she must leave that house.
Would it not be hard for me to assess this without actually calling at their home?
It can be arranged. I can take you there in the morning. I will say that you are friends of mine from London who wish to look at some of his more avant-garde paintings, those he has been unable to sell. He'll never be able to refuse that request.
Very well, that seems a good plan as any. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes. Let me buy the next round of drinks and we can drink to a successful conclusion to this very distressing affair. Your good health.
And so, next morning, after a splendid breakfast, Holmes and I walked up the hill to Greystones, the large, ivy-covered house that belonged to Oliver Wynn. Matthew Haldane was waiting at the gates and showed us up the wide driveway to the Georgian entrance. An elderly butler answered the doorbell.
Please, be so kind as to enter. Good morning, Mr. Haldane.
Good morning, Pearson. Mr. and Mrs. Wynn are at home, I hope.
They are in the studio, Mr. Haldane. Would you care to leave your things here, gentlemen, and follow me?
Thank you.
This way, please. They started work quite early. I think the master is anxious to complete his latest painting of Mrs. Wynn. Just one moment. Mr. Haldane and some visitors to see you, sir. Some visitors to see you, sir. Mr. Oliver, sir? Sir? Madam? Strange. The door is locked from inside.
Here, let me... Esther? Oliver? Is anything wrong? It's Matthew. Open the door. Please, I want to speak to you. It's important. Oliver? Esther? Holmes, something's wrong. You're sure they're both in there, Pearson?
Of course. I saw them enter myself.
The outside, the studio windows. Come along.
Matthew Haldane led the way out of the house and round the garden to where the specially built studio room jutted out. There were large windows. They were fastened from the inside, and the curtains were drawn. But there was a large skylight stretching the length of the room. Matthew climbed up the brick wall, and using the ivy, was able to lie flat and peer down into the studio. He was there but an instant.
Oh, no. Holmes, Watson, we've got to get in there. She is there. Esther, lying on the sofa. And she's dead.
Matthew Haldane slithered his way down from his position near the skylight that covered Oliver Wynn's studio. He dropped to the grass and stood up. His face was pale, his hands trembling. He repeated what he had shouted to us a moment before.
She's lying on the sofa, staring up, looking right at me. But her eyes, they're wide and unblinking. There's blood on her forehead. She is dead. I could tell at a glance.
We must break in. The door, is that the only one into the studio?
Yes, the one Pearson showed us.
Looked a very solid door. I think it's better to break in through these windows. Stand aside. Leave this to me. I think I can reach the key from here. You see, right, that's got it. In we go. Now, the curtain's back. Let's get some light in here. That's better. Yes, you're right, Watson. What do you think?
Oh, she's dead. Bullet wound in the right temple. Here on the floor, a small, pearl-handled woman's pistol.
Better not touch it. Haldane, find the butler fellow, Pearson. Don't let yourself out through that door. Go round the way we came. Get Pearson to send for the police immediately, then come back here. We shall want you when they arrive.
But Esther... Oh, my dearest Esther. This is all my fault. I should have taken you away. Oh, Esther.
Haldane, I appreciate the fact that you are shocked and upset, but please do as I say. Go and send for the police.
Yes, of course, I'm sorry. I'll go straight away. It's unbelievable. Poor Esther. Oh, my...
Now, look here, Holmes. This is all very suspicious. After what this woman told us, it's very odd that she should die such a violent death. But Well, look, there's the pistol, and there's no one else in the room. All the doors and windows fastened from the inside. Do you think her husband's persecution was imaginary, and that the balance of her mind became so disturbed that, well, she killed herself?
On the face of it, that's how it would appear, but the question uppermost in my mind is, where is this man Oliver Wynne? Pearson says that they were both in here.
I suppose he could have left without the butler knowing it. She was in such a state that she locked the doors and windows to prevent interruption and then did away with herself.
That's how it is intended to look, Watson. But we must not take things at their face value. Where is Oliver Wynne? Could he have got out of this locked room? Do you remember the Melville Grange case? How the murderer got in and out of a locked room by using the secret panel on the veranda door?
Yes, I remember it distinctly.
And we must first make sure there is no similar way of getting in and out of this studio. I want to search the place quite thoroughly before the police arrive, or before Haldane gets back.
But, Holmes, do you think that Esther Wynne was telling us the truth? I mean that her husband was so insanely jealous that he would commit murder.
I don't know, Watson. If he was jealous, then perhaps he had reason for being so. I think Matthew Haldane's reactions were genuine enough. They were a little too intimate for a man who was just concerned with a platonic friendship with his cousin. There's more to this than appears. Very, very much more. But no more speculation, Watson. We must go over this room with the greatest of care. Not one small detail must escape our attention. Come, give me a hand.
Together we searched the studio. It was simply one large room with an alcove containing a sink and cupboards. Then, off to one side, a bathroom and changing room. Holmes studied the main door, and then went over all the stonework, even measuring the distances and thicknesses of the walls. He found nothing at all unusual. Matthew Haldane returned and joined in the investigation. It still yielded nothing. We were still hard at it when P.C. Higgs from Great Rylands was shown in.
Constable, I'm afraid this case may be a little outside your usual duties. There is Mrs. Wynne. As you can see, she is dead. The pistol beside her. And the fact that she was alone in this room with all windows and the door locked and bolted from the inside points to suicide.
Oh, I should think it does, but why should the poor soul want to do away with herself?
Perhaps her husband will be able to answer that question if you can find him. But might I suggest that an urgent call be put out to all your local policemen and that nearby towns are alerted? It's most important that Oliver Wynne is found without delay.
Oh, I see what you mean. Very well, Mr. Holmes. I'll see that it's done at once. Suicide, eh?
Suicide, or even more horrifying, murder.
Murder, but by who and how?
Two most important questions, and the answer to both of them at the moment is we don't know. But while you're at the police station sending out the alarm, perhaps you'll be good enough to send a telegram to Scotland Yard. I have an idea they may be of help in this. Inspector Gregson knows this part of the world very well. He was born and brought up in Oak Park, which is only a few miles from here. He's bound to be interested.
Very good, Mr. Holmes. Anything you say.
Right, I will write the telegram. And once again, Watson, we must continue our search of this room.
We resumed the search. Every cupboard was emptied and subjected to very close scrutiny. Holmes, with magnifying glass in hand, went over every shelf and panel. P.C. Higgs came back with some men from Little Rylands, and the body was removed. Still, we continued to go over the room. Holmes was tireless, and only stopped to welcome Gregson when he arrived by special carriage from London. Holmes explained the circumstances most carefully.
But look here, Holmes. If the place was locked and bolted from the inside, there was no one in here, no way of him getting out, and it must be suicide.
I'm quite sure it wasn't. I'm quite sure that Oliver Wynne carried out his wild threats and killed his wife, staging this to appear as suicide.
But, well, how did he do it, and where is he now?
We've been trying to answer those two questions all day, Gregson. There's only one place we haven't looked, and that's under the floorboards.
Oh, but look here. If you're going to pull up the floorboards, it'll take hours, and the man can't have escaped that way.
I've already studied them. They are polished planks of wood. There's nothing unusual about them, except they are of very high quality. There is only one strange feature, and that is that the floorboards are not placed under the bath in the bathroom. There's a space of about 2 feet down to the stone foundations. It is empty. It means nothing. That's the only unusual thing I've come across. After nearly 6 hours of work. It's getting late and I've had no food. I think, Gregson, we should all go back to the Anvil Inn. I'd like to make one request, though. Constable Higgs, are you prepared to put in a little night work? Stay here in this room and don't leave it until we return in the morning?
If that's what you want, Mr. Holmes, and the inspector agrees, yes. And of course I'll stay in this room.
Good man. Come on, Watson. I'm starving.
We went back to the inn. And for the rest of that day, Holmes was both silent and restive. It was late, very late, when He suddenly started up from his chair, discarded his pipe, and reached for his cloak.
We've got to go back, Watson. I have an idea. I've always said that when one has exhausted all the possible explanations for crime, what is left, however absurd and unlikely, it must be the answer. And the answer is, of course, that Oliver Wynne was in that room when his wife died. There was no way that he could leave the room, and so he is still there. Come on.
Holmes hurried me up the hill to Greystones. To our surprise, we found Matthew Haldane in the grounds. He also could not rest and had returned to the scene of the crime. Then, to our intense surprise, Pearson, the butler, appeared. Holmes immediately questioned him.
Pearson, what are you doing up in here in the hall?
It was the constable, Mr. Holmes. Constable Higgs. He's left. I heard movements in the studio. I got up and came down, and I saw the constable leaving, opening the front door and walking down the driveway.
What? It can't be. Watson, Haldane, come quickly, the studio at once.
We rushed through the house into the studio. It all appeared quite orderly, neat and untouched. Holmes ignored the main room. He hurried into the bathroom and, lying face down on the floor, began to tug at the floorboards that ended just under the bath.
I've been blind, fool, Watson. These planks that make up the floor stretch through into the studio. The planks can't be taken up, but at least 3 of them slide. They slide here, under the bath, to fill this gap, and when this gap is filled, there is a space revealed in the studio. There. That's it. Now come and see.
Yeah. Holmes. There's a man there in the space beneath the floorboards.
He's dead. Stripped of his outer garments. Strangled, I'd say.
It's Constable Higgs. His murderer has escaped in police uniform. Oliver Wynne killed his wife and hid himself under the floorboards, drawing them across over himself. So he lay there all the time we carried out our investigations. And when Higgs stayed here alone, he got out, killed Higgs, and took his uniform as a disguise. Quickly, Watson. We must get Gregson to raise the alarm. Every man in the country must be out to catch a murderer in a police constable's uniform.
Holmes, I think I know where he will have gone. To my home, my cottage. It's clear that the man is crazy, as cunning as a fox. But he has tasted blood, and having killed 2 people, he'll think nothing of killing a third. Me. He knew of my feelings for Esther. He'll be out to kill me now. Please, get Gregson to throw a cordon of men round my cottage, and we will catch him. I know we will.
We did exactly as Matthew Haldane asked. Under the supervision of Inspector Gregson, every available man was called upon, and aided by the darkness, we surrounded Haldane's cottage. He was right. Oliver Wynne was lurking in the grounds. The men closed in.
Come on out, Wynne. Wynne, are you there? You can't escape?
You'll never take me alive. Never! Never!
Taken the easy way out. Come on, then. No need for caution any longer.
And so, that was that. But Holmes was a very miserable and depressed man. He counted this case amongst his few failures.
I should have worked it out 2 hours earlier, Watson. I could have saved that constable's life. Write this down as a bitter failure, Watson. I did my best, but for once my best was not good enough. Come, let's go home.
Listen again next Sunday to The Stories of Sherlock Holmes, with Graham Armitage as Holmes and Kerry Jordan as Dr. Watson.
Come on, James. Cheer up. Take a drink. These things happen.
Oh, I know. But I didn't think it'd ever happen to me. I guess I'm going to live to regret it. My life is simply broken apart.
Heck, no, it hasn't. Marriages are breaking up every day. Folk, get over it. Look, I'll tell you what you need.
What?
You need a complete break, and I've got just the idea. What about a trip to Great Britain, huh? We can rustle up the money somehow. It's Queen Victoria's Jubilee year. In June, they're having a big celebration. 21st of June is the great day. What say we go over and join in, huh?
we present the stories of Sherlock Holmes.
The Baselton Estate.
It was 1887, Queen Victoria's Jubilee year, and the spring was quite perfect. The days were sunny and bright. Daffodils bloomed in the parks as workmen became busy cleaning statues and public buildings, and London began to wear a festive air. Sherlock Holmes had just returned from the capitals of Europe, where he'd been working on a case of international importance. He was extremely pleased to be back home and sat for long hours at our windows in Baker Street, looking down at the traffic and the people in the street below.
I must admit, it's very pleasant to be back in London and surrounded by all the old familiar things, Watson. One tries not to apply sweeping statements and generalization about other nationalities, but the fact is that the Germans are heavy and humorless, the Italians are excitable, and the French unpredictable. The French women do dress better than others, and they can make a wonderful meal out of hardly anything at all.
I'm glad your stay on the continent makes you appreciate the English Holmes. Personally, I'm never really happy when I'm abroad. America, well, perhaps is acceptable. Even there, I feel out of place.
It's a vast and interesting country, but for the observant, Americans are quite easy to pick out in a crowd. For instance, Watson, the lady across the road who has just paid off the cabbie of that hansom. Now, she could well be one of our American cousins.
Uh-huh. What makes you say that?
Well, she's unfamiliar with the currency, you see. The cabbie had to show her which coins were which, so she doesn't live in England. Yet she conversed with him fluently enough, which shows that they've been talking in English. She's smartly and expensively dressed, but she's carrying a large buckskin bag instead of the conventional British handbag. It's attached to a length of rawhide carried from the shoulder. When I was in America last year, I saw many women with those bags. I've never seen an English woman use one. She's looking at the numbers of the houses. I think, Watson, we're about to have a visitor. What's the betting against her being an American lady?
Well, she looked quite English to me, but Holmes was right about her visiting us. She walked up the steps with a confident air. The doorbell rang. I remembered it was Mrs. Hudson's day off, so I went down and opened the door. I found myself looking into an amazingly bright pair of blue eyes. This, with a mass of black hair over an oval face and gentle smile, created as lovely a picture as I'd seen that spring. She requested an interview with Holmes in a soft American accent. So, Holmes was right again. Up in our sitting room, she introduced herself.
My name is Charlotte Baselton. I'm from Boston, the USA. I must thank you very much, Mr. Holmes, for granting me this interview without an appointment.
It's my pleasure. You found me at an unusual time. I have nothing important to work upon. I take it that you wish to ask my advice upon some matter of importance. A delicate matter that requires a discreet inquiry, perhaps?
Oh, that is quite correct. I am unfamiliar with such procedures in this country. I have, of course, heard of you, and I know that while you have often worked with the police, you are not part of them, and so anything I say will not be repeated. I am most anxious to avoid a scandal. You see, nothing criminal has happened, at least so far.
Oh, please, I understand. Tell me what's troubling you. From the very beginning, when your anxieties started, try not to leave anything out, even though it may seem very unimportant.
Very well, but it is hard to say when I began to worry. You see, the position is this. My husband is heir to a large estate. He is the great-nephew of Lucas C. Baselton, the Texas cattle millionaire. L.C., as he is popularly known by, has never married. He is now a very old man and quite ill. He has no near relatives except my husband James and another great-nephew, Philip. Philip has proved himself just a no-good. He's a wastrel, a knockabout. What we call smart aleck. In fact, the very reverse of my husband.
I see. Carry on.
Oh, James is a very independent man. When young, he scorned Elsie's wealth and influence and went up to Australia to make his own way. The family lost touch with him, so much so that they assumed he was dead. During this time, Philip led a life of ease and luxury. He got into debt, but his prospects were extremely good. He was to inherit Elsie's vast estate. He went to a moneylender and raised a huge sum of money. He speculated, and with his usual carelessness, lost most of it.
And then your husband returned from the dead, as it were?
Quite. You realize what this means, Mr. Holmes?
Oh, yes. Being the eldest and nearest, he's able to claim the estates when Lucas C. Baselton dies. Phillips will be out in the cold, and the moneylender will have absolutely no chance of getting that vast sum, plus interest, back again. So this means, between the moneylender and his money, there only stands your husband's life. Proceed, please.
Well, old Elsie is very ill. The doctors hold out very little hope. And, well, the fact is that I am convinced that during the next few days, an attempt will be made upon my husband's life. And the attempt will be made here, in London.
Your husband is in London. You know where he's staying?
No, but he is here. He came over with a man called Peter Cottrell. Peter Cottrell is in the pay of Amos Feltman, the moneylender. James does not know this. He thinks Peter is a good friend. When James and I agreed to separate, Peter saw his chance. He comforted James and suggested this trip to England. Since I left my husband, I have found out many things. One is that Peter Cottrell stands to gain $20,000 if the estate goes to Philip and not James. In other words, $20,000 is the blood money the moneylender will pay him to kill James.
I see. And James thinks Peter is his best friend. A very nasty trap. But forewarned is forearmed. All we have to do is to find your husband. Have you any means of identification?
Oh, I have a photograph of my husband. It is here in my bag. Here it is. And on the back is his name and address in Boston. That is our old address. I am staying at the Westbury Hotel in New Bond Street. You can reach me there any time. Please, Mr. Holmes, you will see what you can do to help me, won't you?
Very well, Mrs. Baselton. I will try to help you.
Thank you. I would stress the fact that I don't wish the police or the newspapers to know about this. It would create a dreadful scandal, and that would easily find its way back to the States.
I quite understand. I shall see what I can do. Now, may I offer you coffee before my friend Watson calls a cab to take you back to your hotel? Have no fear. We shall be in touch quite soon.
I saw Charlotte Baselton out and into a hansom cab. I could tell she was most grateful to Holmes, but not at all sure of his chances of success. I was anxious to resume the rounds of my patients, but I had to ask Holmes what he intended to do about this most curious case.
I shall, of course, first check all the fashionable hotels along the park and Piccadilly. The two visitors, Peter Cottrell and James Baselton, will be using their own names. Cottrell dare not do otherwise for fear of rousing his friend's suspicions. They will also be using a bank near at hand. One cannot live without money, especially on a trip from America. They should be quite easy to trace. Yes, I shall find them all right.
And then?
Then I think I shall take a stroll through Soho. If Peter Cottrell is over here with the express intention of killing his best friend, then he will not do the killing himself. He'll hire someone to do the job for him. And that is why I shall seek out our man known as Raoul the Ferret.
Raoul the Ferret? Extraordinary name.
Yes, he's an extraordinary man. I think I know just where to find him. Excuse me now, Watson. There's much work to do.
That cost £9.
Hey, watch it. Watch where you're going.
Oh, it weren't my fault. You should keep your feet yourself.
Oh, is that so? Now, you look here. If you want to make anything of it, let's get out of this crowd.
Yes, that's not a bad idea, Raoul. I don't think we can talk very comfortably in this noise. Let's move down the side street.
What? The wife? It isn't Mr. Sherlock Holmes?
That's correct. I haven't seen you for some months. Are you busy?
So, Mr. Holmes. Why? I can accommodate you if it's worthwhile, of course. What's it this time? Information?
Of course. I've reason to believe that an American gentleman by the name of James Baselton is about to meet his end here in London. He's staying at the Grosvenor House Hotel with another American, Peter Cottrell. Cottrell is the man who is behind the assassination. He must be looking for someone to do the job. Heard any rumors, Ron?
None at all. Well, I could ask a few questions.
I should be very grateful, and my client will pay handsomely. Here, this is a photograph of the intended victim.
Grosvenor House Hotel, you say?
Yes, that's correct. But you'll have to move very quickly. From the inquiries I made this morning, the two men are due to leave for a tour of Scotland within the next 2 days. They're only booked in at the hotel until the day after tomorrow. I know that Cottrell went to his bank at noon today and changed $1,000 American into British sovereigns. Now, this would be the payment for the killing.
Well, that sort of money talks, eh? Well, if there's any talking going on, I'll make sure I hear it. Don't worry, Mr. Holmes. If there's a job being planned, then I shall find out all about it.
Good. But as I say, you must move fast. If Cottrell has the ready cash, and if they're moving out the day after tomorrow, then it's clear that the murder is planned for tomorrow night. Get to work, Raoul. Live up to your name. Ferret it out. And quick.
I was extremely busy for the rest of that day and saw little of Holmes, who seemed quite preoccupied
and didn't mention the Baselton Estate case at all, even over breakfast the next morning. But at lunchtime, when I came back to Baker Street, there was a rather scruffy-looking man loitering around the steps of 221B. He inquired after Holmes and said his name was Raoul, and he had something of importance to impart. I knew immediately what it was about and showed him up to our rooms. There, over a tasty luncheon of bubble and squeak, Raoul the ferret told us all he'd uncovered.
How's it to be tonight, Mr. Holmes? The man who's doing the job is Diggs Baker. He's known to have received 100 quid in advance, and the balance is when it's all over.
Yes. Where and how, Raoul?
Somewhere in Greek Street, outside one of the restaurants, I think.
Which one?
I don't know. Diggs is one of his favourite hangouts. A place known as Aristos. He's the most likely. Can't tell you the time either, but could be any time between 8 o'clock and midnight.
Yes, I should imagine the later the better. I doubt if it'll be before 9. Good work, Raoul. Now, here is what I wish you to do. You will find someone to give you a hand, as this cannot be stopped without plenty of help. I need 3 men to create a street scene. Now listen very carefully. Having enlisted these men, you will arrange to patrol Greek Street from 8 o'clock onwards. Station yourself outside Aristos, and I shall arrive to give you final instructions. Now don't worry, there'll be no police interference and as little trouble as possible. Now, finish up the bubble and squeak. There's a lot for us to do. Watson, I take it that you will have completed your day's work by 6 o'clock and will be willing to join in the evening's activity?
If you try to prevent me, there'll be trouble, Holmes.
Good. Very well. We shall meet later, and from 7 o'clock onwards, we shall be outside the Grosvenor House Hotel. Yes, it could be a very long and quite dangerous evening, so both of you come prepared.
I found it hard to concentrate upon my work for the rest of that afternoon. I simply couldn't see how Holmes could prevent an underworld crime of this magnitude without a sensation and perhaps bloodshed. However, I agreed to pocket my service revolver when we left Baker Street, and in the warmth of that April evening, I stood with Holmes opposite the Grosvenor Hotel. It's a good job the evening's so mild, Holmes. At least we can sit on one of the park benches without arousing curiosity.
Yes, that is fortunate.
But can't you tell me what to anticipate? I mean, what form do you think this murder plot will take?
I can't say. I am, however, fairly sure that Peter Cottrell will not be actively involved. That means that James Baselton will somehow be lured into Soho. Yes, that's why we're watching, Watson. If only we knew what was taking place at this very moment between those 2 men, we should have a clearer idea of how to go about things. I'm only sure that Peter Cottrell is about to put his deadly plan into action. Baselton will, of course, not suspect a thing.
I'm sorry that I have to go out straight away, James, but I must try to fix up this unexpected business with an export firm.
Oh, I thought you'd done all that.
Well, I couldn't finalize it till after hours. Look, it won't take long. Look, I have a table booked at Aristos for 8 o'clock. It's that great little place in Soho. You know, we went there a couple of nights back. Why don't you go there? I'll join you as soon as I fix things up.
I can wait here. As a matter of fact, I don't care if we don't go out at all.
Oh, come on. It's our last night in London until Jubilee Day, and then the city will be crowded. We can have a leisurely meal and maybe fix ourselves up with a couple of girls. There's some great lookers around Aristos.
Oh, no, I kind of dislike that casual stuff. Ever since I left Charlotte, I've been thinking I made a mess of my love life.
No, come on, at least let's have a decent meal out. We came over here to cheer you up, remember?
Oh, all right. I'll meet you at the restaurant at 8 o'clock. But don't keep me waiting there too long, will you, Pete?
I'll be there just as soon as I can. I'll go order you handsome right now. See you later, James. And don't flirt with too many girls till I get there.
There, Watson. See? The hansom cab that is waiting. That is Peter Cottrell getting into it. Quickly, take the other cab and follow him. Stay near him and report back to me in Greek Street as soon as you find out where he is. Now, hurry now, Watson, hurry.
I did as I was told, and it was a most curious experience. For nearly an hour, my cabby followed Cottrell's hansom about the streets of London. Had I not known otherwise, I should have thought the man was simply on a sightseeing tour. We trotted our way round the Tower of London, St. Paul's and the Embankment, and along to Buckingham Palace, before ending back in Park Lane, where Cottrell alighted at the Grosvenor Hotel again. He had clearly simply been killing time. It was 8 o'clock. I inquired from the hotel reception and was told that Mr. Cottrell had just come in, and Mr. Baselton had left half an hour before. I took the hansom to Greek Street.
There you are, Watson. What's your news?
Cottrell led me a rare chase all over London, stopping nowhere, just riding about until he ended up back at the hotel.
Yes, that's much as I anticipated. Meanwhile, Baselton is in that restaurant. I've been in and he's sitting at a table in a corner and looking very annoyed. Also in the restaurant is the man Raoul the Ferret, as identified as Diggs Baker.
Gracious, Holmes, I was supposing the killing takes place in there.
Not in a district like this, Watson. Restaurants are particular about keeping their custom. No, it'll be when Baselton leaves the place. He's unwise enough to walk towards Soho Square to find a cab, as is most likely. The Diggs will almost certainly follow. A scuffle, a flash of a knife, and then it will all be over.
Yes, but what do we do?
Look across the road near the entrance. Raoul and some friends are ready. So is that waiting three-wheeler. There's some movement. Come on, Watson. Baselton's about to leave. We must get to him before Diggs Baker does. Come on.
Evening, sir. Nice evening. You've been needing a cab, sir.
Oh, no, thank you. I shall walk.
Oh, I wouldn't do that, sir. Not if I was you. It's dangerous. Much better to come with me. This way, if you please.
No, look here. I guess you want trouble, and so...
No, that ain't wise. Now, come on. Come on.
The street suddenly seemed filled with activity. 3 men seized James Baselton, and within seconds a pad of chloroform was placed over his face. The cab moved forward. Raoul, Holmes, and I clambered in beside the half-unconscious form of Baselton, and we set out at a spanking pace for Baker Street. Once in our rooms, Baselton was given a heavy sleeping draught, and I was told to watch over him. Holmes left once again, and I guessed he was going to interview the man who had caused all this trouble, Peter Cottrell.
You are Peter Cottrell?
That is correct. Who are you? And how dare you force your way into this hotel room?
My name is Sherlock Holmes. You're lucky to be dealing with me and not with our Metropolitan Police or even Scotland Yard.
What are you talking about? Get out of here.
No. You are the person who is going to get out. Get out of the country and keep out. I'd also advise you to stay away from your home in America and the clutches of Amos Feltman, the moneylender, in whose pay you have been for many months.
I don't know what you're talking about. How dare you accuse me of having dealings with moneylenders?
Now stop blustering, Cottrell. James Baselton knows the truth. We have proof of your activities, and Philip Baselton's debts have been made public back in Boston. I'm offering you your one chance to escape from the charge of attempted murder. The man Diggs Baker is prepared to give evidence. Now, will you listen to reason?
What are you going to do?
Nothing, if you obey my instructions. You still have a reasonable amount of money in your account at the bank. Tomorrow you will withdraw it all and buy a ticket on the next packet steamer for France. Once there, you will quietly disappear. If you appear again either in London or Boston, I will have you arrested. The choice is yours. Either make your own way somewhere else in the world or face ruin and imprisonment. Well, Cottrell, what do you say?
Holmes returned surprisingly early and related all that had occurred. James Baselton was fast asleep in the spare room. I kept the adjoining door open during the night in case he woke, but he didn't. It was quite late the next morning when he opened his eyes.
My head. Where the devil am I?
You've woken up at last. That is good. How do you feel?
Who the heck are you? What am I doing here? I haven't been asleep. I've been drugged. I remember now. I was in that restaurant in Greek Street. I came out and I was attacked. Now, I demand an explanation for it. How dare you hold me here against my will?
You are not being held against your will. You have been brought here for your own good. There was a plot against you. You're a very lucky man, Mr. Baselton.
Plot against me? What the devil are you talking about? And how do you know my name? What does all this mean?
I not only know your name, I know all about you. Your failed marriage, your dying uncle, your trip to Europe. I also know more about you than you know yourself.
Stop talking nonsense. If I'm being held here against my will, then kindly order me a cab and let me return to my hotel. Perhaps my friend Peter Cottrell can sort this out.
Your friend Peter Cottrell is not at the Grosvenor House Hotel. And you will be surprised to hear that he is not your friend, but your most deadly enemy. Now, Mr. Baselton, will you rise and don a dressing gown? Over a good old-fashioned English breakfast of eggs and bacon and Indian tea, I will explain to you in great detail how you are now still living and able to enjoy life on the Baselton Estate.
At first, James Baselton was reluctant to accept our hospitality. But he could see that neither Holmes nor I were the criminals he first took us to be. He was a very puzzled man as he sat at our dining table and toyed with breakfast, as Holmes went over the case from the very beginning. As Holmes told the tale, the skepticism gradually faded from Baselton's face, and an expression of wonderment grew in his eyes. The disbelief vanished when Holmes explained that his wife had brought the investigation about, and that it was through her love and loyalty that Cottrell's treachery had been exposed.
I was forced to do a little bluffing in the end. Of course, I told Cottrell that I had proof of his dealings with Amos Feltman, the money dealer. I hadn't. I told him also But your cousin Philip's debts were well known. They aren't. I also told him that Diggs Baker was prepared to give evidence against him. He isn't. In fact, Diggs is getting off extremely well with £100 in cash for a crime he wasn't able to commit. Unfortunately, we cannot bring him to book. Not this time. But his type will be caught eventually. Before he does another killing, I hope. But if he goes free, at least you are free also.
Mr. Holmes, Dr. Watson, if all you say is true, then I am forever in your debt. I owe you my life. It still seems quite incredible that Peter Cottrell could have, well, deceived me in such a fashion, but I suppose I have to face the facts. I guess I've been just plain stupid. I should have listened to my wife.
Yes, I think you should. But she's still at the Westbury Hotel, not far from here. When you've finished your breakfast, perhaps you'd like to take a cab round there?
I most certainly will. Thank you, again, both of you.
Is there anything else I can do for you?
Well, there is one thing. I guess I'll never get used to drinking tea. Do you think I might beg a cup of strong coffee before I go?
Listen again next Sunday to The Stories of Sherlock Holmes, with Graham Armitage as Holmes and Kerry Jordan as Dr. Watson.